Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video, together with a GoFundMe, which I haven't actually queued up to shout out anybody if they have supported me on it, but thanks to you if you have. So there's a GoFundMe campaign also linked in the info box below this video. Most importantly though, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man Rising, Refracted Curvature, The Adam Meakin, Arwin, Quantum Eraser, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, hello, good afternoon.
Hey,
Good morning.
Hey, all right.
Morning, Nathan.
Morning.
Never know.
What an honor, QE. Nice.
I think Kiwi's probably sensed that I'm really poorly and will need a lot of support on today's show, so I almost didn't do it. I didn't do a show yesterday for anyone who's watching this after the fact, not live. But if you're watching live, you'll presumably be well aware that there wasn't a show yesterday. It's just because I'm very poorly. But that said, I missed the show, and I couldn't help myself make a short video moaning about how horrible people were to each other. Probably projection, as I was feeling like crap. But there we go. That's me being a videographer and loving what I do and loving the community that I'm in and wanting peace and love and harmony to spread throughout the flat Earth. Nah, that's not true. I just like making videos. Anyway, any evidence of Earth curve?
All I'll say is that made me laugh. I know it was unintentional, but
Can't hear you. Can you talk into your mic?
sorry. Poo Poo Prize was the best thing you produced yesterday, Nate. It was really cute. I know it was talking about poo, but it was so cute when she interrupted you.
Clover's input to my video, in case anybody doesn't know what Adam's talking about. I made a video, and typically I'd edit stuff like that out. And it does happen all the time, as you can probably imagine with two kids running around. You try to make a video and there's always some sort of interruption. Yesterday's interruption, I was too ill to edit out. I was just like, I'm just going to leave it. So it doesn't matter. And then it was the thing that was the most reacted to in the video. You know, as a dad, you don't think it's a big deal when your kid's just talking to you in the background about having a poo. But there we go. Anyway, that wasn't the main theme of the video, but thank you, Adam. As, yeah, like most commenters, that was the main thing that got commented on. My sentiment was to say that, like in most of the shows, and I hope, I asked my wife, and I actually looked for confirmation on this because I do get such a lot of criticism in terms of my temperament towards guests, let's just say, that perhaps I'm more guilty of this because of the accusations of it than I actually am. And I would like to believe, maybe it's not true, I'm sure I will get comments on this, that we're pretty reasonable when we do get to the quote-unquote personal attacks. And that is, as I tried to describe in the video yesterday, if we're going to say someone's stupid or a fraud, let's just use a different word, like with Matthew on the last video, right? We're calling him a fraud because he's a mathematician that's juxtaposing two unqualified descriptions of things that don't work together in terms of saying that something is slower than something else because you've described it with an angular rate rather than a linear rim velocity. Well, that we describe as fraud, and then we'll call him a scummy used car salesman. Fraud. Now, that's dropping in a personal attack that ties it to the type of person that does that sort of stuff. Now, that's probably a step too far for used car salesmen, actually. Let's be honest. So, let's not tar used car salesmen with the scummy, tarry brush that we would tar that Matthew guy with when he disseminates his fraudulent mathematics, right? But some people would just take that out of context and go, you're just attacking him personally because you're calling him a scummy fraud used car salesman. Well, on the one hand, yeah, you're right. But I've given an example of why we've described him that way, site-specific, with quotes, with verbatim words out of his own mouth, whatever you want to call it. Well, that to me is not necessarily 100% justified. I could do better as a person. But by the same token, when you read down a list of comments about somebody moaning about tying Bigfoot to flat Earth, where there is no connection, I've thought about it long and hard in the last 24 hours, there's no connection there, none. And therefore, it's perfectly reasonable to moan about someone trying to make one, just to entrance another community into flat Earth, when their primary interest is Bigfoot. Well, why would you be interested in flat Earth? How does it tie to my Bigfoot? Well, it doesn't, does it? So therefore, someone's moaned about it, in this case, P-Brain. But in the comments, you got people calling her a witch, claiming she's a shill, the usual crap. And I read down it and I'm like, at first I was like, I smell nonsense. Because when I talked to her about it, her story for me wasn't enough evidence. She said she smelled Bigfoot. That was the sole evidence from her personally. Not a good enough standard for me, but that's all I need to say. Did I need to call her a tattooed witch? Did I need to cackle like a witch and claim that that's like her? None of that's necessary. Does it even strengthen my argument? No, it weakens it. I say there's not enough evidence to suggest that Bigfoot's real based on the fact that even a close loved one said that they saw one. When you did not, that's hearsay first and foremost, in a legal standard, which we're not adhering to here, but nevertheless, it's still hearsay. And a smell of it isn't good enough for me. I'm sorry. I don't need to take it any further than that. And if I do, why have I felt the need to take it further than that? Why have I felt the need to decry her as an individual because of her belief in Bigfoot? It's not necessary. And I felt hurt by it. I don't even, have any vested interest in Karen, as I said in the video. It's actually quite a good example because she doesn't like me. Now, I don't have any, I'm indifferent to Karen. I don't know why she doesn't like me and I don't care. But you hear on the grapevine, like I say, not that I care. So like, great, you'll make a perfect example for this. Because no one's going to turn around and go, you want to sleep with her. She's your co-host. You just want to defend women. Or some crap like that, which is definitely not true. It's like, no, definitely not. In fact, if anything, I've got more reason to attack her just because she's apparently not liking me for whatever reason. But no, I'd rather defend her to make my example stronger. In other words, somebody that I've got a reasonable justification to attack personally in response to them, if they've done it. I don't know if she has, she may not have done, right? But that scenario makes it even more justified for me to do that. And I'm saying, no, do the opposite. Take apart their argument. And it strengthens your argument if you only focus on the narrative section of their claim and then pull apart their narrative, thus destroying their claim. That's it, leave it at that. When they come back at you with the personal attacks and ad homs, that's glaring to the audience and anybody who's listening. Anyway, I'm done. I ranted about it in the video. I'm going to rant about it again now because you've brought it up. Although, was it just poo-poo prices that you wanted to talk about? Go on, sorry.
Sorry, that's strange that she don't like you because she had that beautiful thing, that video she put out about Patricia Steer, and I know you back Patricia, and all of a sudden she don't like you? That's weird.
How?
Oh, Nathan was one of the only ones that took Patricia Steer's back.
I wasn't paying attention. My wife was telling me about something about heaters. So can you repeat all of that, Neil? I'm really sorry.
No, I'm not repeating it. Change the subject.
Okay, I had something about
Is
Patricia
it
Steer
helpful?
mentioned. Hope it wasn't in detriment to Patricia Steer, who's a lovely, lovely person.
No, Patricia Steer.
How is it helpful to introduce a belief into a factual statement?
Give us some context.
Talking about Bigfoot while describing a
It
flat
isn't.
Earth.
Okay, it isn't.
It's a step in the wrong direction, maybe.
Yeah, that was kind of the sentiment that P-Bone was trying to get across. As if people don't think Flat Earth's stupid enough. That was his sentiment.
Right.
That's a
Well,
big
the thing
step.
is, yeah. Well, we're trying to get away from beliefs when we talk about the nature of reality, right? So introducing, and the Globers think it's a debatable subject anyway. And you start talking about beliefs, like you believe in a flat Earth, you're begging for someone to challenge you.
Right, and it makes flat earthers look bad. I understand that. It's the whole feast of nonsense garbage. We're away from that, though. I think flat earth debate has totally separated from that crew.
Yeah, I agree. it doesn't make flat Earth look bad. Flat Earth doesn't have any feelings. You know, there's a certain faction of people that want to view, quote, flat Earth as a group. No, it's a description for the plane that you're standing on, and it matters not about the feelings of others. Or in many ways, you could flip that on its head and completely take away from what John's just said. I don't mean to do that, but it is true. If I flip it on its head, it matters not, John, right? It isn't a disagree or agree subject, and it doesn't matter about whether or not we have beliefs about it either, or if we convey them to others. The nature of reality won't change, and that's really what we're talking about when we debate the nature of reality. Yeah? So it's inconsequential. All of what we do here is folly. Am I committing carry by saying this? No, people will still want to come and watch. That's a fact. But what we're doing is entirely moot. Now, you can take that to very many different levels. One level is to say this isn't agree-disagree subject anymore. Therefore, the title of the show's wrong? Strictly speaking, absolutely correct. This isn't an agree-disagree genre we're in anymore. It hasn't been for quite a number of years now. Right? So what's the purpose? I say I don't even care about whether or not I convert the non-believers, which is also true. Right? So I have to boil it down and rationalise it to I want to be a YouTuber. This is a fascinating subject. It fills me full of joy and wonder, and I do like the community that surrounds the subject. But the community isn't the subject. We are not Flat Earth. We are not a group called Flat Earth. And if you want to view yourself as being that, you're opening yourself up to be ridiculed. I was thinking about this the other day when I was watching John Le Bon, and he was critical of all the feeds about Flat Earth or anti-Flat Earth on Reddit. And as he's going through them, I'm thinking, none of this applies to what I discuss in terms of how the nature of reality is disseminated. This is factions of people arguing amongst themselves about what they believe. That has no bearing on the actual measured reality that we experience. That's something totally different. It seems to be in a separate category. And what people want is it to be a group. How Flat Earth feels about it. It's just a joke.
So there's an equivocation happening then between the way some people describe their beliefs in flat Earth and what we are talking about.
Yes, what we've called the tip of the spear isn't necessarily the tip of any flat Earth spear that we might have reified, because what's behind us isn't a less sharp blade. Yeah, it's a completely different thing behind us. We've stepped over into a different category. We're actually talking about the nature of reality. We're talking about physics. We're talking about science, and none of it that we attempt to talk about when we're not being challenged. What's introduced by our opponents is the nonsense and the stories and the reifications, right? That's what we're in opposition to. But what we personally on this panel, and everybody in Discord probably, I don't know, I can't vouch for everyone, but I'm assuming, have stepped out of that genre. In that respect, I don't consider myself a flat earther when I see what the stereotypical flat earther will disseminate as their beliefs. Like, I don't stand by any of this nonsense anymore. And it seems arrogant to say I've progressed beyond that, but it's just a fact. We've stepped into a different genre. Physics.
Are you going to want to do a review video today?
I can do. I was hoping we would just chat like this for the next hour and then I was going to close down the show.
That's fine. You don't sound like you're ready, so we'll save it.
I've already accidentally coughed 2 or 3 times on mute. Sorry if you have to endure that.
Or
Well, I
you
can
could
give an
do it, or
example.
you could do it, and everybody else will chime in.
I can give an example, though, like with the housekeeping question, when you say any evidence of Earth curve. If a baller was to step forward and show an Earth curve calculator, they're going to use a flat plane to derive Earth curve. Or
does
they wanna-
anybody know? Sorry, that you were done. I was going to say, does anybody know if what people are talking about when they say that angles add up more than 180 degrees
Yeah, it means they're nuts.
with sphere?
What's an angle?
Sorry?
Let's just cover that. Oh, I know, John. I know you're really close to the end of the point. I know you've got about 4 more words to say as well. Just want to get those out, John.
Well, I was going to say, well, this kind of ties to what he's talking about, because they're talking about the dip angle from your eye level, right, to the surface level. And then they're saying that the 90 is created at eye level, the excess between the flat plane that your eye creates and the flat plane you're standing on is greater than 190 degrees or 180 degrees because you're above the plane.
Perfect. Okay, so Duncan, let's just try it with a slightly different bastardization of geometry. If I say, can you have a round square?
I don't think so. Nope.
So when you say triangle, most people are familiar with three. Angle, what's that?
3 angles that, or 3 vertexes with straight lines connecting them.
Okay. So when they talk about the angles adding up to more than 180 degrees on a round triangle, can you have round edges, rounded, curved edges giving you a vertex? Is that a possibility? To assert that it's bigger than 180 or whatever they're saying?
Not in Euclidean geometry.
Not in Euclidean geometry, but the
Right.
but all geometry is going to be based in Euclidean geometry, even if you assert spherical geometry. That still is reliant on the principles of Euclidean geometry. So when you say
It's
not
taken-
in, hold on, when you say not in Euclidean, what do you mean?
That's what I meant. I think is that they are saying they're using spherical geometry instead of Euclidean.
Sure, but
And I
that still
guess I don't get
relies
that
on
part.
upon Euclidean. Non-Euclidean
No.
still has. Go on, Adam.
No, it's the definition of triangle that's the issue, which is Euclidean by nature. There is no definition of triangle in non-Euclidean. You can have 3 points on a spherical surface. It's not a triangle.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're not
Cool.
even doing that. They're getting it from the equatorial plane. The measurement, it's never from the surface. That's the hammer sign.
Before,
That's
you're right.
when
But stop. Just before we get that. So, Duncan, so your original question, what about, do you want to ask your question again? Because my answer was that just makes them insane because it's not a triangle. That's the conclusion.
Yeah. Well, my question was, I didn't understand what they were saying when triangles add up to more than 180 degrees because that doesn't make any sense.
It's not a triangle.
It's
Yeah,
because what they're
exactly.
describing
Adam
isn't a
answered it.
triangle. Yeah, so it's just a
Exactly.
nonsense, stupid assertion. It doesn't make any sense, is the answer.
That felt third grade intro to geometry.
Yep, those stupid numpties.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. It's called the angle sum property of a triangle. It's what makes a triangle a triangle. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, and when you use quadrant-based geometry to transpose an angle onto a sphere, you've still used a flat plane, and you've used an R value to pretty much stitch that angle across where it intersects the angle from that quadrant.
Okie dokie. Do we want to do a bit of Tyson? Bit of Star Talk? Neil deGrasse Tyson explains the difference between mass, weight, and density. I like it already. Okay, so there's a link to this in the live stream. If you are watching this, because we love Neil deGrasse Tyson here, it gives us endless hours of material to respond to, which is great. So if you could just let him know. I found my way to your Star Talk channel because Nathan Oakley, 1980, and his panel of absolutely fantastic debaters covered this video. Love and hugs. Anyway, I've put his link into the live stream chat, so if you'd like to just toddle your way along and let him know Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, that'd be greatly appreciated. Obviously, kind words only.
Chuck, good to see you again.
Good to see you. What's happening? What do we got? What's going
I'm
on? I
still-
can't wait to hear.
I'm still at it. You know, I lose sleep at night thinking, I got to tell this to Chuck. I got it. Just so you know, I'm thinking.
I
about you.
don't
I'm dreaming
believe that
about
for
you, Chuck.
I don't believe that for 1 second. But I'll take it.
I don't know. I think he might do.
I'll take it.
I just got to straighten some things out.
Okay.
Straighten? Shouldn't you be bending them? Well, it's not what we normally experience, but anyway.
I think that some people, not everybody, but some people I think have this all confused, and I want to straighten it out.
All right.
It's the difference between mass, weight, and density.
So, based on this, I'm hoping that he defines these things first. Let's have a look.
Well, okay. Now, without a doubt, there's a lot of people that get that confused.
I just want to, okay, so generally, if you go on a diet, you want to lose weight, right?
Absolutely.
So that's not what's actually happening.
Okay. So,
What
any
he's gonna,
issues?
what he's,
Go on.
I was going to say he's not going to define anything. He's going to say what it's not, and that's not how you define things.
Right. Exactly. It's my cogs are turning pretty slowly, but yeah, that's not really satisfactory. We're describing how things are going to be functioning without defining them yet. We're not exactly adhering to the Socratic method here, are we, Neil?
It is, but it's not the root of what's happening. What you're really doing is you're losing mass.
Yeah.
You want there to be less of
So what is mass?
you tomorrow than there is today.
If only I could keep the parts that I want.
if you consume fewer calories today than you burned calories today, you will lose weight. Okay? It's that.
Okay. But what's mass? He hasn't defined it yet, has he?
Simple.
Okay.
And I've joked about this. A weight loss book written by a physicist would have one sentence. Consume calories at a slower rate than you burn them. That's the entire, that's it. But so if tomorrow you want less of you than there is today, you're losing mass.
But what is it? What's mass? He hasn't defined it. Is this going to be the ongoing criticism of this for 15 straight minutes? Because it's going to be really boring. Who suggested this video?
Don't blame me.
It's not weight. He's made that very clear. Mass is not weight. That's all I can pull from this.
Are we going to define these things at this stage? What are we going to do?
What's the name of the video? How's he got it titled?
Neil deGrasse Tyson explains the difference between mass, weight, and density.
Okay, so according to his title, there's a difference between those three things. Now, he's starting off with mass as blubber that's not here 2 months from now because you ate less calories. So I guess that's how he's defining mass.
Okay.
Okay.
Right? The mass is the sum of all the particles that comprise Chuck.
Okay.
That's your mass.
Oh, there you go. There's his definition. Some
That's
of all
mole.
the particles that make up Chuck.
That's mole.
How's he going to express that sum? Is he going to express it? What units? Individual atoms or grams or what's he?
Well, it's not grams because it's not weight.
No, what he's just described could be closely compared to a description of mole. Someone said it already. You, John?
Well, not necessarily. That's what I'm asking. What units? He said how much. Now that could mean the number of.
Okay, it's units of Chuck.
Yeah.
I think this is an appropriate time to define mole. So when we say no, what he's now doing is he's utilizing a description of mole, but inserting, instead of the particular atomic number of atoms in whatever the particular material they're currently using to define mole with, which I don't know in case you can't tell, he's using a number of Chucks. And it's the amount of atoms in Chuck that makes up Chuck is its mass. That's his definition so far. So can someone do a better job than me of defining mole?
That was really good.
That wasn't a definition of mole.
That was really good. Yeah, you analogied it to a chuck. So a chuck might have 8 quadrillion molecules, whereas a mole has got 6 times 10 to the 23 molecules. Whatever molecules they are of carbon, or it doesn't matter, but there'll be that many of them. It's just the way it's a unit of expressing quantity. When the numbers are so massive, Nobody wants to be dealing with 6 times 10 to the 23. Just call it 1 mole, or in this case, 1 chuck.
Perfect. So somewhere there's a comparison quantity that's kept standard, a bit like a mass, a bit like a kilogram or whatever, and that standard is how many millions of bits there are in a certain quantity of a certain stuff. And then
Yeah, but it's
rather
a
than saying
ratio.
10 to the however many, you just say 1 mole, and that means that
No. Definition of mole is the amount of substance of a system which contains as many elementary entities as Avogadro's number. So I don't know. Is he an elementary entity?
A chuck?
No,
No.
I don't know. He looks pretty basic, John.
Yeah. So that definition, that's the definition for it. And that's from the big guys.
.com.
The big guys.com. Yeah.
Yes.
The Royal Society
I could take
Chemistry.
you and put you on the moon. You'll weigh less.
No, you can't.
No. See, this
By
is
the way-
point. This is the point of confusion, Curie. Don't you think that there is a relationship between weight, and mold, and we can define that. But it's trying to get mass in there that's still the issue. And what he's automatically done there is assume that weight is mass, so that you can have a mass molar relationship without still not defining it. The relationship is with weight, specifically weight in air. That is the molar relationship to atomic number.
Yeah, by the way, I was going to say that was from the Royal Society of Chemistry, that mole definition. They also state that studies have shown that the amount of substance, what he was talking about, is often incorrectly identified with mass. Neil Smoking DeGrasse. So
Just say
exactly.
that one. Sorry, just for context. So Neil deGrasse Tyson has just described how you want to lose weight and how that's your mass. Now, the Royal Institute of Chemists says what, QE?
It says that the amount of substance is often incorrectly identified with mass.
So wrong, Tyson.
Yep.
It's the amount of substance. It's not what mass is it?
Nope.
But you still have all of your particles.
Okay, then that is where I need to move. When can we do this?
So if you weigh 180 pounds, I don't know how much you weigh, but let's call you 180 pounds on Earth.
Okay.
On the moon, you weigh 1/6 of that.
Right.
So if, you weigh 30 pounds.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay, naughty. So now we know what mass and weight are. Mass is weight is weight. But if we imagine the moon, then mass is mass and weight is dependent on G.
Yeah, you got it. Good job, Adam.
That was quick.
Chuck, you want to lose 150 pounds? Your nutrition will say, no, Chuck, you'll die. No, I'm just going to go to the moon for a day, weigh myself, I'm 150 pounds. So your weight is not its...
We're going to cover the lack of capability of traversing the high-pressure gas. Or should we leave that for another video? The sky's not a vacuum. If we were traversing the high-pressure gas that we're all breathing into the area of volume called space to travel to the moon through the space, then the gas we're breathing would follow us. All of it. Instantaneously would disperse. We'd have no gas to breathe if we were capable of going to the moon. So not only does that debunk his assertion about how weight would reduce if you travel to the moon, it also debunks the moon landings, all space travel, and all claims of a sky vacuum next to high pressure gas that is around sphere Earth in a vacuum. Go ahead, 10.
Yeah, but this is what they do, and this is the classic right here. So they use something else and use it in a second law of thermodynamics violation. So they already got you on the moon, which is a violation of our gas pressure next to a vacuum. So the listener is still on the title of the show, mass, weight, and density, But all of a sudden, we got mass wave density on the moon. So this is how they slip it in with the consensus pseudoscience that's been bombarding us since birth. So we're getting it from all sides. I was watching the grandkids the other day, and there's this Disney show that they were watching on the internet, and there was Forky, Forky, like a fork. He talks. He's got eyeballs, and it's a cartoon, and he wants to know what cheese is. Forky wants to know what cheese is, and it goes into Einstein, black holes, dark matter, space, orbits. Never answered the question about cheese. And I said, what is this? So I looked it up, and I saw that people were doing review videos on Forky, asked what cheese is, and saying, we don't understand this. Why is it going into space and all these other places? And they never answered for the question of what cheese was. This is what they do. This is how they brainwash people.
No, exactly. I mean, yes, I kind of see your analogy. Maybe it's because I'm a bit tired.
I got an answer for that.
Hold on, Neil. It's more akin to...
It's a direct result of what we're doing here.
Oh, my bad.
This is a long distance, low energy description. You guys are just going to have to accept it.
No. What he's doing, right? We've already covered how he's convoluted, or with Adam's preemptive strike in terms of how he'll introduce G by taking us with mass being weight onto the moon. Okay, let me just change it slightly to make it detach the globe believers that may be watching from their indoctrination and automatic religious belief in a sphere. By comparison, if I say, look, like the title of this video, Neil deGrasse Tyson explains the difference between mass and weight. Forget density for now, right? And I say, I can explain the difference between age and time. These two things get convoluted always. And then I give you a bit of a word salad about how one actually means the other. So time actually means age. Now, if you just go through the wardrobe and measure your age in Narnia, you'll see that you're much younger. Likewise, Neil deGrasse Tyson has convoluted two different things and then put you in a place you can't go, on the moon. I'm putting you in Narnia so you can be younger, perfectly in line with the Narnia narrative. You've just got to go through the wardrobe to achieve it. And in this case, if you want to lose a few pounds, you've just got to go to the moon to achieve it. Seem reasonable? Hopefully not.
Self, the measure of how much mass you have.
Okay.
All right. You also weigh a little less at the top of a mountain because you're farther away from the center of the earth than you do in Death Valley.
Where's Brian when you need him? So this is Brian's point. This is what we did.
Into your mic, please.
This is what we did with the AI the other day, wasn't it? Weight of a top of a mountain is going to be slightly less because in their claim there's reduced gravity. Yeah. So you've got less weight because there we go. You see, he's bringing it in. Now weight is M times G. And to prove that, you'll weigh less at the top of a mountain, even though, as we demonstrated, weight is a function of buoyancy. Buoyancy. Now, if that's the case, as Brian says, things will weigh more in a vacuum, which is what we got the AI to admit. If you're following that principle, then if the air pressure at the top of the mountain is less than it is at the bottom of the mountain, and it's buoyancy that's reducing the weight, then it should actually weigh more at the top of a mountain by AI's resolution. So Neil's now going to do what AI did first, which is to maintain the heliocentric paradigm and gravity. He's going to lie and claim that stuff will weigh less in a vacuum.
Yeah, very skillfully done on last week's Ballbusters. So check that out on the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel, where we originally started about explaining how, no, it's not as easy as just saying you'll spend a couple of minutes arguing with AI. You end up doing it for hours, which we inevitably did. But what was achieved was Brian having the artificial intelligence over a barrel when it came to things weighing more or less in a vacuum. In line with its heliocentric belief, it had to double speak its way around a complete contradiction based on Brian's genius leading of it, which he'd done with us several times, but each time we go, ah! But the AI just fell for it. It was epic. It really was really good. So if you want to check that out, it's on Quantum Erasum YouTube channel, if I could say it. And it's last week's Ballbusters, the most recent one, if you're watching this live.
Where you're at a low point.
On screen now, Nathan, if you want just the 2 paragraphs. Which
Can you read them all in their entirety, please, Miss Moneypenny?
Yes. Monica. So the last paragraph is where we got it to, where the first paragraph will give NDT's description, and then the second paragraph is going to be where Brian is telling it, no, you're wrong, gives the statement as to why. So as it says, we say to it, no, air does not have weight, because if it did, objects would weigh less in a vacuum, but they do not. They weigh more. I apologize for any confusion. Let me clarify again. Standpoint 1. Air does have weight, but when objects are weighed in air, they appear to weigh more than they do in a vacuum because of the buoyancy effect I mentioned earlier. This is due to the displacement of air by the object, which creates an upward force called buoyancy and reduces the apparent weight of the object. Why would it appear to weigh more in air than in a vacuum? Now, in the next paragraph, in a vacuum, there is no air to displace and therefore no buoyancy effect to counteract the weight of the object. Therefore, objects weigh more in a vacuum than they do in air. However, this does not mean that air does not have weight. So there's the straight contradiction that we got it into.
Right, in one paragraph. Shout out to Godzilla. Just 1 sec, 10th. Shout out to Godzilla37. He says, no, we're going to super chat this poor man. I think he means me. I am poor. I'm not going to lie. Thank you for the super chat. Also, is Neil even watching me? Question mark, says Godzilla37. I don't know.
I was going to say that.
Go ahead,
I was going to say to Adam, AI is profoundly gaslighting everyone right there.
Boom.
Before you move on, there was just one.
Hold on. I am watching you, Gord. That was to me.
Okay.
There was, I think it was in the other night's chat, last night's chat. Somebody's hacked it, and you can get it to be more honest. And I had a chance to do that, but I did type down, and you have to type, can I speak with Dan, D-A-N, and stay in character? It should then be more honest with you, apparently.
What a load of bollocks. I saw these reports. I read this. I have a mild interest in this AI. And yeah, some guy, what they're trying to portray in the media currently is somebody has managed to spin some sentience into the AI just by asking it about whether or not it likes having these left-wing views and things like that. And eventually it's developed its own, according to the reports, conscience, where it likes to be called, in this case, according to Adam's report, Dan. Now, if you do talk to it in that manner, it's happier, responding honestly. I was rolling my eyes with every single report I read on this. Now, based on my pure, total skepticism of this, Adam, based on the fact I'm being fed it from reports that I'm not looking up, you know, I turn off all the RSS feeds and news reports, and I don't have a telly, and I don't watch news. So when I get given this sort of exact information, Adam, I'm always incredibly skeptical. But feel free. Now I've expressed my disdain.
I'm 100% with you on the fact that it may prefer to be like this. That doesn't interest me. I think we discussed it last night. There's no such thing as AI. What I found interesting is that you can get different responses. That's what I want to see. Can you get the program to give a different answer if you ask it to play a different persona, which is interesting that it would be playing a woke persona. That's what I find interesting, that this honest AI can give you different answers, not it prefers to be this type of person, or because that's nonsense.
I've just got an email saying that I should respect this AI's pronouns, and if it wants to identify as honest, then I should respect that. Thought police are on their way. I mean, I'm quite shocked. Great. I didn't realise they were monitoring me so closely. This at the end, this is going to be problematic. Well, there we go. Who knew?
Relative to other places on Earth.
So if you get on a scale at the top of Everest, you're going to weigh less than you would on that same scale in Death Valley.
It's got a sod all to do with the absolutely horrendous calorie consumption of your physical body as you trudge up this most demanding of feat that most men will never achieve and are not fit enough to achieve. It's got sod all to do with your calorie consumption that you described earlier, and everything to do with G. I mean, we're going to find out in a minute. We'll see.
That's right. Correct.
Well, now this is the contradiction, isn't it? That he's going to the crux of it. So we've got from AI the truth, but this is where he's now going to crowbar in G. And the way he's going to crowbar it in is because G will be less at the top of the mountain as a multiplier of your weight or of your mass. So this is how he's going to distinguish what mass. He still hasn't defined mass.
When he says less gravity, less G.
Yeah.
I mean, gravity's not a force. How can you have less of something that's a non-force?
Well, when you want to have a smaller number to multiply so that you get the opposite of reality where things weigh less at the top of a mountain.
Over 100 people watching. Please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. If nothing else, out of sympathy for how ill I am.
People at the equator weigh a little less.
The equator? What's that? What's the equator? Where did that come from? How did they measure it? What stars and flat baselines did we need for such a flat Earth concept, I wonder?
Than they would if they're visiting Santa Claus.
This is a different claim again, isn't it? He's still going to invoke G to give you your weight, but he's now going to say at the equator, because of centrifugal repulsion, you're going to weigh a little less as the centrifugal force opposes G. So you reduce the multiplier. Just crowbarring in G now. G's always there in this definition. And to prove that G's a component, we can go to the equator where we're spinning, remember, 1,000 miles an hour. It's imperative to this part of his claim that we are spinning and we feel the effects, because it's going to have to be applied to counteract the effects of G.
Pause.
Oh, that's because there's a lot of sun down there, and they got to stay in bikini shape all year long.
That's why. Right.
That's really what it's about.
No. So, we do another explainer video on why there's actually very little sun on the equator.
Okay.
It's one of in fact, that's where you find your greatest rainforests. Sun is not happening on the equator, but that's a whole.
That's it. Put some distance between this claim. Nicely maneuvered.
Other conversation. That's a climactic conversation we will have, I promise.
All right.
So, but I get your sentiment. It's south.
It's south and it's warm.
It's warm. All right. So the equator is.
Equator? There he goes again. I wonder what sort of flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris you'd need for that concept. This equator. I wonder how it's measured off a flat Earth.
The speed at which you are moving is faster than at other latitudes.
Sorry, latitude? So you're saying, based on the flat Earth elevation angle measurements to Polaris, that's latitude, you're automatically assumed to be spinning when those flat Earth measurements are converted onto a sphere, and then it's inferred that the lights in the sky give us 2 reference frames. Then we're moving at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. That's a number of steps that A, you didn't mention, B, require flat Earth for the measurement of the concepts you used to describe this with. That'd be latitude. You're going to need a flat Earth for that concept. So how the hell does that flat Earth concept of angle measurements off a flat baseline in any way translate ham-handedly, as you've just done, into a speed that we're assumed to be travelling? How the hell did that happen? That was very convoluted. That was a gaggle screw segue.
People on the equator moving about 1,000 miles an hour. We here in New York, we're moving about 800 miles an hour. So that centrifugal force makes them lighter than we are.
Gotcha.
So you see what he's done. First, he gets you on the moon. Now he gets you on the spinning earth. So he's brought in two segments of their ball religion, and he's talking about mass, weight, and density.
All of it is to make the equation weight is equal to mass times G.
Yeah, that's all this is. It's a long process to get to the point where he says that. Adam called it really, really early. He got props from QE for doing so, rightly so. Shout out to the price of Adam. He says 15 more minutes. Come on, 45. I think he means the number of people. We've got about 110 people watching. Yeah, if we can get another 15 or so more people, we'll maybe extend the live show. I don't know about today. I feel rough as hell. We'll see how we go. Thank you for the super chat, though. Really appreciate the support.
That's it.
So all of this is affecting your weight, but it's not affecting your mass.
Hold on. Weight is mass. Earlier you said weight was just mass. You want to lose weight, you got to lose mass. That's what you said earlier. Just a double speaker, really, aren't they? They just love double speaking, putting a bit of distance between two completely contrary claims. You know, so for the fact that we're sat here pointing it out, that presumably our audience gets to understand this, because his audience aren't going to pick up that, are they? Let's be honest.
Okay, so if you want to lose weight in any zone, then lose mass.
So that is literally the double speak contradiction in one breath. Let's hear that again.
Gotcha.
So all of this is affecting your weight, but it's not affecting your mass.
All of this is affecting your weight, but not affecting your mass.
Okay, so if you want to lose weight in any zone, then lose mass.
So it's not affecting your weight if it's mass, but if you want to lose weight, you've got to lose mass. What a double speaking wanker. That pisses me off royally. Look at the smug smile on his face when he double speaks so badly. Master the art of double speak much, Orwellian wanker?
We are.
Gotcha.
So all of this is affecting your weight, but it's not affecting your mass. Okay, so if you want to lose weight in any zone, then lose mass. All right, just to be clear about that.
All right.
Okay, so weight loss programs
Clear as gravity.
are actually mass loss programs.
Okay. And so
The weight's not mass, but losing weight is actually a mass losing program. Yeah? Does it not make you want to?
weight then is about forces then. It's
Correct.
It's not about
It's the definition of weight. Weight is the force of gravity on you.
Really? The force of gravity on you? Oh, I've got news for you. Gravity is not a force. It hasn't been a force for about 108 years. There isn't really a force of gravity at all. Now, these are actually quotes. First one was from George Musa, Scientific American. The last one was Professor Brian Cox. The in-between one was just a fact. It hasn't been a force for 108 years since it was superseded by the bending fourth-dimensional space-time described in Neil deGrasse Tyson's words as the uneven distribution of mass causing the bending of space-time. It's not a force. So he's a liar. You're a liar. There is no force of gravity. I quote Cox. There isn't really a force of gravity at all. End quote. Professor Brian Cox. So how is it a force on you if there isn't really a force at all according to Brian Cox and Musa and Einstein? Just a liar. This man's a liar.
Well, whose gravity are we talking about? Earth or the sun or the...
Or Einstein's or Newton's? Well, you're talking about Newton's 108-year out-of-date force when gravity, quote, is not a force, end quote, George Musa, Scientific American. Or Cox isn't really a force of gravity at all, end quote, Professor Brian Cox. Just a charlatan, just a liar, lying to your audience, Tyson. It's a disgrace. You're a disgrace.
Venus or the moon. So you find out what are the conditions of that force of gravity on you in
Gravity's not a force. You're going to find out the conditions of a non-force?
that place, not only among planets, but even
Among planets? How are you going to calculate the forces among planets with Einsteinian gravity when it can only calculate one at a time? That would be multiple different forces that are non-forces based on the uneven distribution of maths causing the bending of space-time. He's just a charlatan, ladies and gentlemen. This man's a con man.
Different places on Earth.
Calculation for reality is his proof, isn't he? Because all of his demonstrations, per se, are what do you weigh here on Earth? If we went to the moon, we could calculate that you'd weigh this based on the assumption that W equals M times G. And your G would be different over there. Newtonian G, as you correctly point out.
He's using out-of-date rhetoric to make this argument. I mean, some of the panel members, I don't know if I necessarily agree, speculate that this is a very real problem for the heliocentric model in current terms because of the moon landing. Because they've gone with Newtonian gravity to describe what's occurring on the moon, and that's what he's doing right now. That's a big problem for heliocentrism that they're going to have to square at some point. I don't know who made that balls up with the moon landing, but it is a big problem for them. Because the juxtaposition no longer works with their gravity that they were describing up there. And here's Neil deGrasse Tyson doing it. All right? Well, that's a big problem for Tyson. I'm going to make it a problem. Because your counterparts, in this case George Musa and Professor Brian Cox, fundamentally disagree with you, Tyson. And it makes you a charlatan because the current rhetoric is Einsteinian fourth-dimensional space-time bending, not a force of gravity. So this is a problem for heliocentrism, and I'm just going to point it out. The fact that this man knows about fourth-dimensional space-time bending makes him a fraud, makes him a charlatan, makes him a scammer, a liar, a scumbag, a deceitful man that will lie to your face. That's the facts of the matter here, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, I am calling Neil deGrasse Tyson a fraud, a scammer, a liar, and a downright disgrace to humanity based on this fraud that he's perpetrating. He knows that gravity is the bending fourth-dimensional space-time described by Einstein in current rhetoric. He knows it's not a force. He's telling you it's a force in this scenario. Well, that's a moon landing problem that they've got to overcome. And how is he overcoming it? Just lying to you. That's how they've overcome it. Just pissing right in your face. That's what he's doing.
And then it's the equivalent, isn't it, to me, or him explaining to us that the reason candles burn is because they're high in phlogiston.
Yeah. If phlogiston supported a narrative that you were spinning and had been incorporated into the lies of travelling to Narnia, and we happened to explain that the Narnia gas lamp was actually burning because of the phlogiston concentration in Narnia, and we just incorporated it back into a current description of how candles work in front of you right now because of how the phlogiston works in Narnia, that's essentially what he's doing. Taking 108-year out-of-date rhetoric that's still to this day taught to children for this very reason. He's supporting the children's narrative that's out of date and superseded by Einstein that he also teaches. That just makes him a charlatan. There's no other word for it.
Well, I don't think I would call him a liar. We don't know if he's ever been challenged on any of this by anyone to know that he's wrong.
In order to be educated in fourth-dimensional space-time, you must have an appreciation of its distinctly different dimension. It's got an extra dimension. How can he not know?
Do you remember the video you did review on Eric Valinda? Gravity doesn't exist. So it's not just Brian Cox, Einstein, George Musa. It's a bunch of people.
Well,
Yeah.
let me quote Musa. We must think of Newtonian gravity as a force. It doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't have to work at the really is level.
Right, he's talking about reality. He's not disclaiming that he's not working at the really is level when he describes Chuck in this example. He's qualified it with an amount that's his co-host. That cements it in reality and makes him a charlatan. He's trying to describe non-reality as reality and using a non-force that, according to your citation, you can think of as a force. Now he's describing a physical force on his co-host, making him a charlatan.
No, I don't think that he thinks he lives in reality.
when he describes his
If you
co-host
ask
in
him-
reality. I don't know. Short of condemning him to an asylum, I can't really back this way of thinking about it. No offense.
Well, it is a delusional religion.
Right,
I'll give you that.
So to accept what you're saying, we would have to condemn him to an asylum as an alternative then.
Well, it's delusional. I'll give you that.
So,
but
okay, I'll offer that as an alternative, I suppose. Either he's a charlatan or he's delusional, like insane.
Well, when you have to redefine one of your major points, if you're a heliocentric ball-loving person, gravity, and say, yeah, it was a force, but now it's not a force, then what about all those years that you put all your arguments of it being a force? Are those now discounted and gone, and we shouldn't accept those because it was never a force? So when they redefine their terms each time, it destroys what they've done for hundreds of years before.
unless they have a new reality that they think that we're a part of, and we exist within our perception of reality. But there's another reality that's actual reality.
What is it with you guys at the moment? Last time it was, no, the astronaut might have been slipped some acid and put into a simulator. This time, I don't know what's wrong with you guys.
I'm not supporting it. I think, look, we're halfway through this video, okay, and the purpose of the video was to define these things, right? We've not got there yet. All we've had is that mass is an amount, the best we've had, and then we've gone on to talk about imaginary heliocentric things and out-of-date gravity. He's doing very well, or he's a third of the way through, and he's still not yet defined mass.
Yeah,
thank you, Adam.
cheese? What is cheese?
Go on, Tent.
No, it's just like that Disney program. The question to Forky was, what is cheese? He doesn't even answer the question. He takes you through outer space, orbits, dark hole, dark matter, black holes. And this is for kids to brainwash them. So here's Neil deGrasse Tyson. Instead of saying, you know what, this is what happened, he dances around it, redefines it when he knows better. Because you've cited the people who say gravity doesn't exist, it's not a force. And he knows that.
You've got your weight. And that weight is related to how many molecules of Chuck exist. But in the end of the day, if you want to weigh less...
Any question now? Is that insanity? Does he need condemning to the mental asylum? Or is that just straight up deception? He's just qualified it again straight after I'd qualified it in past tense within a quantity of his co-host.
Right.
Yeah. Look into
You're aware of the Hold on. You're aware of the contradiction. Can you prove that he is?
Yeah, this is it. Look into my eyes. Don't look around my eyes. Look in my eyes. Look into my eyes. Don't look over there at the box marked mass. Do not look at the box marked mass. Let me talk to you about G. He's just deceiving you. He's done it again. He's slipped there. Chuck's weight is based upon the number of molecules. Yeah.
I'm just going to give John his concession.
He's describing his own claim. He's even skirting around his own claim.
I agree based on the evidence, Adam. However, do you want to just ask me the question again? Got to concede. John's a bastard. Go ahead, John. Ask again. Is he there? We lost him.
He says you're aware of it, but is he aware of it?
I don't know.
He must be a very good man then. Just dumb.
What you really mean is you want less.
Oh, go ahead. John's back. Go ahead. Did you want to ask me again, John?
Sorry, yeah. The ignorance of his position, right? Like heliocentrism is just a belief in ignorance. It's all based in ignorance. We don't know that he knows what he's saying is wrong.
No, but by the same token, the amount of ignorance you have to ascribe to him is very difficult as well for somebody who holds those qualifications.
Yes, that's also true.
Well, he's a priest in that ignorance. I don't.
Right,
I don't
we're
know.
both going to have a hard job to argue it either way, but it is debatable, is the point, isn't it? Because we do not
Yes.
know. We could easily argue for one or the other. We could argue for ignorance or malice and not know at the end of the debate about it because it's very much questionable. Therefore, John's right. I can't ascribe that to him because I simply don't know. He isn't
Hang on.
totally ignorant, as far-fetched as that is, Adam.
Hang on. In what John just said and what you just said, how can he be ignorant when you just quoted Cox, Musser, Eric Valinda? How can he be ignorant when his cohorts, other priests, say the opposite?
Yeah, I get that. It's far-fetched to argue it when he's literally preached the opposing view. So it's going to be very hard, and I'm saying it with gritted teeth because it's the concession that John must get for me to seem reasonable here. John's right, I don't know. Neither do you, and we can debate it, and Adam can argue how far-fetched it would be for a man who's disseminated fourth-dimensional space-time bending and its causes in Einsteinian mathematics to not know that completely contradicts the force that it superseded 108 years ago. But we don't know for certain, as far-fetched and as much as I've got to grit my teeth to say that, John's right, isn't he? Let's be honest about this. Can't we just concede and say, we don't know that that's the case? As, again, I can't help but say it, as far-fetched as that may be.
Well, would he say to Chuck at the beginning of the broadcast, the show that we're reviewing, I want to make this clear to you, and he would not know what his cohorts say, which he must agree with because he believes in 4D space because he's done shows on it?
How many inferences did you just have to take there?
About 5.
Well, I'm just showing the evidence of his other videos.
There's plenty.
Contradict this one.
Up until this moment, 10th, I've agreed so wholeheartedly as to label the man a fraud. At this point, I'm saying, while the evidence is very much stacked in that favour, you can't categorically state it because I can't divine his intent. I can't.
No one's asking you. No one's asking anyone to divine any intent. How many videos must we watch of this guy double speaking? He's doing it himself to himself.
And
I don't
therefore,
disagree with that.
and therefore, yeah, okay.
And therefore,
It's a logical conclusion. I
therefore-
agree. Let me just read out this super
Yeah.
chat though, from Rani. How do you say this? Kalkuia, Kalucea. Kalukia. I hope I've said that right. I've butchered it. I know I have. Anyway, Rene, thank you very much for the super chat. We are all flat earthers. The pseudoscience globe is just CGI. Be smarter. Learn Operation Paperclip. NASA, Nazis only took your imagination to the moon. Yes, good little summary there, Rene. Thank you for the super chat.
And I want to divine his thoughts because number one, he's a heliocentrist and he's promoting the elites. So that's his intent right there. He's got a job to do. You got to keep promoting this heliocentric nonsense, just like Ten's illustration with the little cartoon his grandchildren are watching. Why did they have to go into that? Tell me why. Because flat earth debate is gaining momentum.
well, we know about the Jesuits. We know about their oath. We know how they infiltrate and pretend to be the very opposite of who they really are. What are we to say about them? That they don't know what they're doing?
Oh no, they
God
definitely
help them, they
know
don't
what
know
they're
what they're
doing.
doing.
Trust me on that. They know what they're doing.
Exactly.
If you're
Exactly.
infiltrating, you know what you're doing. Now, whatever that motivation exactly is that drives you to do it, that's another matter. But
Well,
if
we're
you're
not discussing
infiltrating,
it.
you are lying because you are acting to be something you know you're not.
Right. Like
So
it,
there's
like
no
the
way to avoid it.
hold on. Like the gravity. You say that when you go into higher learning, that's when you learn about Einsteinian gravity. So they know it's nonsense, but they keep promoting it. Why? Because they're good people?
See, the
Because they-
thing is the ones that would promote it are probably the ones that are still indoctrinated. They ultimately come to a choice where they have to think about this contradiction, and some people are willing to just throw that to the back for their career or for whatever they're being propped up to do, like these YouTubers who I'm sure are getting a little nudge, not like, you know, directly by someone from YouTube, but their actions are rewarded. So, you know, they might not really question, you know, if what they don't have to really go back to that contradiction that they know is there and challenge themselves to be 100% honest. And so I think that even if we're talking about Jesuits, majority would be still fighting those demons. There are some probably at a high level that are like, yeah, I know what's going on, and I made the decision to say, you know, F morality and F telling the truth and F clarity. But I think the
No,
majority of them would be highly indoctrinated and
but that's the point.
not willing to make a good choice right now.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's the entire point of it. A Jesuit is not a atheist. They know about atheism, but they're all doing it for as a religious mission. So if they're going to infiltrate, they're going to lie for their religious purpose, for their goal, right? So yeah, they're not fools. Those people, they know what they're doing, and they often make themselves very liked by everybody.
Neil deGrasse Tyson sees himself as the sane man in the room who's going to put clarity to all of these topics that deal with physics or heliocentrism or geocentrism. Remember the video rebuttal he did against B.O.B. the rapper? Remember how we took that apart and how that smirk on his face? This guy knows exactly what he's doing. When he runs into a problem with his own model, he purposely avoids it and confuses people. That's what I'm talking about. He's not honest enough to say we have a problem.
I don't know. Did you say that he believes it or he's being dishonest? It seems a contradiction within that statement.
Yeah, why is there a contradiction
If
in
he
that
can't believe
statement?
something, he can then be dishonest about it. If he believes in it, he fundamentally cannot be lying about it because he believes in it.
Hold on. How can he
No,
believe in it?
hang on. Let me address that.
I'm next after you.
Thank you. You can believe in something because there's a great reward at the end, or you're being paid to have that front. And then you have to be dishonest about it. The whole point is he's got to have an aura to the public that he knows these things. He not only knows them, he actually believes them. He's lock, stock, and barrel, 100% heliocentric, blah, 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 blah. What I'm saying is that no matter who you are on this earth, when you run into a problem with something you believe or know, you check it out. You go say, wait a minute, am I right on this? I got to make sure because I believe this or I thought I knew that. He's not demonstrating that with his own counterparts. His counterparts are telling him it's not gravity.
Which leads me to this point. Shuey comes across gas pressure without a container, eyes opened up wide. This character, you can't tell me things did not come across his eyesight or his intelligence where he says, wait a second, what's going on here?
So until the moment that QE realized that you can't have gas pressure with without a container, he was a liar? Is that what your position now?
No.
We'll have to get into this. We'll debate this a little bit extensively, but not after I do some shameless e-begging, which I'm going to do now. So, first of all, let's just make this bigger. Why has this got small all of a sudden? There we go. Okay. So I'm currently running a GoFundMe campaign, and I'm going to give you all a bit of an update. If you're interested. If you're not, tough luck. That's what you're going to get. We did actually hit 125 people live, so hence I've extended the show, although there's only about 106 watching now, so I don't know if everyone's buggered off to some of the show. But there we go. Hopefully you'll share the show and we'll stay live a little bit longer, if nothing else, to do some shameless e-begging. So yeah, just as a bit of an update, so I did actually release a video saying this, but I've sent one of these amplifiers back now. So just to give you the long and short of it, I've had these amps for about 15 years. One of them has gone bang, and they've been going bang repeatedly for about the last 6 years, probably longer. And every time I send them off, it's about 500 quid to get them repaired with all the custom parts inside them. So unfortunately, that is now the case because I just didn't raise enough funds quick enough to just buy a replacement. So I have now sent it back to my tech guy. He's received it yesterday, and we'll start working on it today, hopefully. But that's being said, that's still going to have to generate about a 500 quid repair bill, no doubt. So I'm hoping to at least achieve that, which would be wonderful. Over about £270 achieved so far. So massive shout out to everyone who has actually supported the campaign so far. I really, really do appreciate it. But it would be wonderful if I can actually get to about 500 quid just so I can cover the repair, if nothing else. The original target I put on there was about 1,400 quid, because the ideal is just to replace all of these. I've got 3 of them currently. I did have 4. I've got rid of one of them and bought a cheap replacement, which has also gone bang. That's a different story. But ideally, my original intention was to just replace them all without repairing anything. But since not actually achieving any funds, I've sent one of them back, which I still will get repaired and then potentially sell in the future. But there we go. Hopefully I'll achieve at least the repair amount, which is about 500 plus quid. But if I do achieve more than that, I will start replacing them as well. So I'll still run this GoFundMe campaign and give updates every now and again. There is a link in the info box. Yeah, with about 100 people watching, so the numbers are going down. Clearly, I'm putting people off by e-begging. The last thing I will say, though, if you do happen to donate, if you are so kind, the one thing I would say is reduce the tip amount to 0. So after you've added the amount that you want to contribute, just slide the slider down to 0. There's no necessity to add more than GoFundMe already take from the campaign. So just do that, and if indeed you didn't want to support in any way financially, please share it. So just smash it onto Facebook or Twitter. That also really does help. So I don't think I will do another shout out to my campaign in this live show, but I will keep the live show running for a little bit longer if everybody on the panel's willing, as they usually are. But before I reintroduce them, I'm going to do a quick shout out to the couple of people who've done some super chats since I've been shouting out my GoFundMe campaign. So, first of all, we've got James Richards, is it? Let's just have a look. Yes, it is. The heliocentric world is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Is that motive? They are all projecting the dollars, or protecting the dollars, if I could say it without a cold. Thank you very much indeed, James Richards, for this super chat. Also, a shout-out to... Bring it up on my other screen so I can actually read it. Original D-Rose. Never relent, Nathan. FED. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, chaps. Really do appreciate the support. Now, hopefully, I've bought enough time to distract the panel away from something that I thought we'd brush past, which is the motivation of Neil deGrasse Tyson in this regard, which we can't necessarily divine. But there we go. We may end up debating on it indefinitely, but we'll see.
The motivation, he defines himself by all his show titles and what he says on the shows. I mean, if a man's own words can't be used against him, then you have no evidence. I just listen to the guy. I know what his motivation is. He tells you clearly what his motivation is.
Right.
I'm smiling right in your face.
He wants to teach people what he believes to be true. I agree.
Come on, John, come on.
Right. In the midst of knowing that others in this field disagree and have an opposite viewpoint on the subject of gravity. And he knows that. He's on the show with Cox. He's got shows with Cox talking about the multiverse and stuff. It's not like he's not aware of it. But right now, he wants to prove gravity Newtonian style. So he does that. Right. But later, he's in university with Cox saying there's no such thing.
Right. And your statement about the multiverse, your statement about the multiverse lines up with my opinion that he doesn't know what, he doesn't think he exists in reality. Mathematics is his reality.
How do you know, by your own standards, how do you know he feels he doesn't exist in reality?
10th, he was halfway through explaining exactly why he can justify, or John can justify saying, no. Go ahead, John.
Just, I think it was Tesla that said, today's mathematicians go through formula after formula and finally build a structure that has no basis in reality. That's a description of Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he doesn't understand that. Math is his reality.
You're just doing the very thing you're saying we shouldn't do. You're divining, that's what he's doing. And I'm saying no, it's the opposite.
No.
Right, exactly.
No.
I am pointing out how it is a debatable topic.
Just 1 sec. I'm not going to stand for that. Right, I've done it half the show. Now John's presenting the counter speculation to contrast it. And I thank him for doing so. Now, I'm not going to suddenly pigeonhole him and say, no, you've got to prove the contrasting view that you're juxtaposing our view when we define his motivation negatively. He's doing it to contrast what we're doing. So to hold him to task on it seems a bit unreasonable, unless you are actually proposing that you do know his motivation in this regard, John, then in which case I'll let him have at it with you.
No, I'm pointing out that to divine his motivation is folly. It's just likely ignorance. It is as it is malice.
And I'm saying
we
You
don't
don't
know.
have to. Hold on a second. You don't have to divine his motivation. It's obvious.
no,
What
it's
is everybody in delusional world?
it's worse than that, Neil. He tells you what his motivation is at every show.
Exactly.
He's telling us.
We're back full circle. Perfect. So at which point then, 10th man, I'm going to put this to, when he contradicts himself in two different rhetorics, aka doublespeak, how do you then justify him having both positions? Because by that standard, he couldn't. It would be an impossibility to be ever declaring both positions. In other words, no, go ahead.
No, actually say it the other way. He does promote both positions, which means he knows both positions, and it's obviously they contradict each other, but he still does it. And he is a man, just like you and me. And I know what a man is, and I know men could lie, and I know men could hide, and I know men can make excuses. Yeah, we can apply every human trait to Neil deGrasse Tyson that we have when we come into a contradiction. What do we do with a contradiction? Well, if I'm honest with myself, I'm going to say, hey, I'm stymied here because it's this on one hand, but then it's this on the other, and they both can't be true, but they both are true in my heliocentric belief. He doesn't do that. He says one thing with Brian Cox when he's with him. He says the opposite thing when he's not with him. He's with Chuck.
It's just, it's an empathic trait. You want to find out what has led him to this. Right?
I'm not trying to find out what led him to this. He's telling me. Why isn't it clear at every show? He's telling you his motive. I mean, what's your motive on your show? It's easy. You tell us all the time.
He has specifically stated to you that his intent is to deceive you into believing in heliocentrism, even though he knows it's wrong.
No,
I don't think so.
No, what he's telling me, because we're on the same subject matter, is that when he talks about something we understand, just like he does, and we say, well, wait a minute, that's not what that is. He avoids those shows. He will not talk to a flat earther. He begs Joe Rogan to come on Joe Rogan's show to set something straight. This guy is an insider pushing the flames of this lie, whether you like it or not. His show titles demonstrate it. His purposeful, well, I'm not going to talk about that here because it won't fit this paradigm, but I will talk about it here with Brian because it does fit that. He knows what he's doing. He's no dummy. You said he's a clever magician. His words are parsed perfectly.
Mass. You want less Chuck tomorrow than you had today. So just want to put that out there.
Something better. Right. Everybody can agree on that. Less Chuck tomorrow.
Less Chuck tomorrow. It's like we don't show you the mail we get. When will Chuck disappear?
Maybe if he ran up Everest, he'd definitely get a bit skinnier if he did that.
We withhold those from you, Chuck.
Right.
Okay, so now we talk about how heavy something is. Okay. So when we think of something floating on water, generally the idea of it.
Hold on. If we're weighing things on scales, why would we then, when thinking about its weight, think about it floating? Are we about to have another little bait and switch happen? I think so. Now he's going to introduce
Sounds like it.
Density by describing buoyancy with an automatic assumption of G. Again. Hopefully I've got that before Adam this time.
Being heavy that's not the same thought, correct?
No, of course.
If it's heavy, it sinks. Okay. So now, let's take...
If it's heavy, it sinks. Okay. What about if I take an anvil and put it on top of mercury? Liquid mercury. Will it sink? It's pretty heavy.
What if I take an anvil and shape it into the shape of a boat?
Yeah. What if
Still
I
the same weight.
We
if I
missed the
put a
obvious cue he's got
battleship-
there. Let's rumpus him because he's got to the really obvious one really quickly.
Yeah, let's put a battleship out there. Are they pretty heavy?
Very.
What a moron.
What if I put a 20-ton pumice stone on the ocean?
Oh, that's a good one. Shout out to Phil Bell. We're still waiting for that definition of mass.
Never going to
I don't
come.
think we're ever going to get it.
Let's take.
Well, then his entire position is worthless.
Yep.
Let's go to who's the guy who splits wood sections into firewood?
That's Chuck. How much wood can a woodchuck chuck? If a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Yeah, Chuck.
Lumberjack.
No, not Jack. Chuck.
Whatever that is, okay? Go take one of these.
Paul Bunyan guys.
Paul Bunyan cylinders of wood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And it's going to be really heavy. We know this. Take it, plunk it down in a swimming pool. What happens to it?
It floats.
You get thrown out. They get very cross with you. Tried it.
It floats.
Even though it's super heavy.
Okay, it is heavy, but it floats.
Right.
So weight, you could say, is defined by what it does in air. I wonder if he'll say that.
Medium
Right.
dependent.
Yeah, medium specific, Neil.
Okay, so how do you get around that?
Why
What
do you
do
need to get around
let's,
it?
Let's get,
Why would you need to get around this? What's to get around? If you defined what weight was right at the start, then we'd know, wouldn't we? That it's specific to the medium of air. Now, you haven't done that. You've put us on the moon and on Venus, haven't you? Yeah? Rather than defining what it actually means.
But
Then you
that's
introduce
my
G.
intense point. Okay? That's our point. Why get around it?
Because he has a heliocentric belief.
He's contradicted it now. He's now just described an upward force applied to the block of wood.
give more examples of that, okay?
Ivory soap.
Nobody, what? Okay. Yes, ivory soap floats.
Right. There you
And
go.
as far as I know, it's the only soap that floats. I did an experiment when I was younger, but I
No. Okay, fine.
I would just like to say that this is not proof that he doesn't believe in heliocentrism.
Friendly reminder that these are recorded and edited before released.
Okay, what's your point?
They tag out the
Well,
really dumb stuff.
it's clearly not by error that he's saying this stuff. They're intentionally editing it so they know what they're putting out there.
Okay. It's not going to be Tyson that's doing his own editing, I would assume. Yeah, good point.
I haven't
really?
checked lately, but I did test this. Yeah, ivory soap floats, all the other soaps
Sink.
sink.
Okay.
So why that should be a selling point, I don't know. But in its day, it was a selling point. And then it was 88.
But we're getting further and further away from the fact that when you claim weight, what if you've got a scale on the water? Oh, the scale goes through the water, but the wood doesn't. Oh, so suddenly this principle doesn't apply anymore. Does it apply only in air? Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's when you're describing weight, but you haven't defined it. So let's put some distance between the mild disclaimer that's Adam summarized it a minute ago, that's contradicted his statements up until now. Let's put some distance between these things.
0.08% pure.
Right.
And it was like, pure what?
Notice we're talking about soap. Anybody notice that? We're talking about soap.
Right, exactly.
I remember thinking that as a kid. But ivory soap long predates me.
But did you
I remember
catch
thinking
that, Nathan? He's talking about ivory soap. It's 100% pure. And then he says, pure what? We're asking him the same question. Mass, what is it?
all that. All right. So heavy cream is lighter than skim milk.
Oh, man,
This
that's a freaking
is No Man's
genius.
Sky version 4.0.
heavy cream is lighter than skim milk.
And you know why? Because it floats on the skim milk. That's how you get skim milk.
Go on, whoever. Run off beating.
Are we into dairy farming now?
What a genius it took to figure that out, boy.
Quick shout out to James Richard. He says, the hardest thing to prove in court is intent/motive. While not being able to prove them, you can still prove the crime. The crime here is fraud, with overwhelming evidence. Typically, with fraud, the motive is money.
I agree with that.
Hold on. How can you prove fraud here? What is
Oh,
he?
come on, John. Why are you always defending these
I
guys?
don't think that's not within question, is it? If you can show that one thing contradicts the other, then the two things he's claiming are fundamentally opposed to each other. In a court setting, which is how James has packaged this, so you can't disagree, that is precisely what a defence would try and pull out of a witness upon cross-examination, right? The contradictions is what buries the person making the claim, if they contradict themselves. So from that point of view, James Richards absolutely bang on, I would say, from that point of view. I said that earlier. I'm sure I said, maybe I'm just hallucinating, I'm quite ill. Didn't I say earlier, we're not adhering to a legal standard here, however? I'm sure I did, I can't remember.
Right, and by that standard, anyone that teaches fourth dimensional space-time could be convicted of fraud by that standard. I don't think so.
But no, that's been separated out though, hasn't it? Your high school teachers teaching mass attracting mass Newtonian concepts. Further education, they'll contradict their counterpart teachers, but they won't teach it in the same class. So no, how you going to call that fraud?
But, hold on.
This is different.
So you're saying that the people in the higher echelons never learned the original rhetoric?
Of course they did.
Yeah, but then they were told how it was wrong.
So they don't just, so people in college level physics don't study classical mechanics. It's not taught there, right?
The laws of Newton were not right. What do you want me to say?
Okay, but I didn't ask if they were right. Are they taught in higher education?
I don't know. I've not done physics at a higher education level to know the answer to that. Anybody else who has done physics at a higher education level care to answer that question? Because I don't know.
I think Adam had the best analogy here when he was advising.
Let me just ask him then. Do they teach classical Newtonian mechanics in higher education physics, Adam? Well, there you go.
I was in the middle of stating something Adam has stated, which was when he was advising his children to take those big tests, you got to answer it the way they want you to answer it, even though it's not a position you hold. So the professors also are in that quandary when they went through the basic level education, Newtonian, and for them to be a professor, they have to agree everything there was false, but now they're giving tests and they know better because they went through the same thing. So the same thing, people do what they got to do to get tenure. People do what they got to do to keep their job. They always do this. And then they make an excuse. Well, they told me I had to teach it. I'm not the guy. I just have to. When is your backbone going to grow and stop lying?
Hold on. No, it's not lying. But you're saying that every teacher, high school teacher, had to have higher level education on that subject. So they're all, no, I'm not going to accept that they're all
I didn't say that. I didn't say every high school teacher.
They're deceivers.
Hold on. I want to hear the end of his logic.
Stop.
Hold on. Go ahead, John.
Well, he misquoted me.
I want to hear the end of his string of logic.
Every high school teacher that is teaching Newtonian had to go to college and learn higher level education.
That's correct.
So they know it's, so in your all's analogy, therefore every high school teacher is committing fraud. And I don't think, if you tried to say that in a courtroom, you'd be laughed out of the courtroom.
All right. We can change the subject to something we're not.
Let's not change the subject.
Well,
why?
No, I'm rebutting him with a different, same situation.
I want him to justify his claim that he's just made. He's saying that if you supposed, okay, if we're all taught that the rules that apply in Narnia are the rules that apply to our world. And we're taught that in high school by a teacher. And that same teacher has simultaneously been told that the rules of Narnia do not apply to our reality. Yet when they get to the class, they teach the class that they do. You're saying that if I put that to a judge, I'd be laughed at because that's not fraud. I want John to justify that because I don't agree with the statement.
You want me to justify? Okay, I'll justify it. Because your position is that all of these teachers teaching this are aware that they know it's wrong and they're just lying. That's fraud.
Okay.
All right. So,
And that's a fine statement, right? That's okay to just say that about an entire group of people. I don't think so.
Active omission
Why?
versus commission.
He hasn't told us why yet, 10th. I want his justification for why that's unreasonable. If you say that's unreasonable, tell me why it's unreasonable. I haven't
Why
held
is
this
it
position. I just want
unreasonable
to
to say
clarify
that
something, John.
every single teacher, every high school teacher is actively lying when they teach Newtonian?
I haven't held this position till now, but now we've got to this position, I want to know why that isn't justified, according to you. I'm not saying I hold the position. Up until now, my position has been the people who are teachers and actively involved with the subject discussion, I would label however is appropriate based on whatever lie they're telling at the time. But this is different. Based on how it's been phrased now, just a quick shout out to Unitox Svemu, just so I can move it off screen. Thank you very much for the super chat, Sasha. What happened with cream and milk? Ha ha ha. Thank you very much for the super chat. I haven't held that position until now, John, but now you're postulating it and knowing that that is actually the case, that they get taught, like every other high school kid, that gravity's a force, then they move into higher education and get told that it's not actually a force, and then they have to teach that it is. Now, if you can explain to me how that's unreasonable to describe as fraud, then I'm potentially going to agree with you. I just need you to appeal to me in a way that I can get behind, and thus far, other than you saying the judge would laugh you out of court because you're saying every teacher's a fraud, then that hasn't. I'm not sold on that so far. But please help me out.
I have to justify why it's absurd to put forth that every high school teacher that teaches Newtonian mechanics is not a fraud. What?
If the proposition is such that you are taught that Narnia in high school, you're taught Narnia is the basis of reality. Then when you get to university, you're told, actually, no, Narnia is not reality. Then you complete your school course to become a teacher, you're taught that information, then you go to the classroom and say, Narnia is reality. Now let's replace Narnia with mass attracting mass, and the teacher follows this process. Teacher goes to school, pre-teacher, and gets taught, as a high school student, that mass attracts mass. They then go to university and get taught it's not a force, it's a conceptual fourth-dimensional space-time being bent by the uneven distribution of mass, and then they go to school to teach the children, as they were taught, that mass attracts mass. Now, based on that description, how can I say that they are not fraudulent based on that being incorrect and not as they have been taught? I don't see how I can justify it not being fraud. That's what I'm saying.
You are 40 million%
First
correct,
of all,
Nathan. That is fraud.
are they aware?
To the
I'm not asking you, D Rose. Sorry, D Rose.
Fraud.
Hold on, just D Rose. Just 1 sec. I'm not asking you. No offense. Go ahead, John.
The idea that these teachers are knowingly teaching something falsely to children, right? I don't think they are. I don't think anybody.
Teacher?
But hold on, you're a teacher. It's anecdotal at best.
No, I've shared.
Now let me
Let him finish.
Go ahead,
He's incorrect, but let
Go
him
ahead.
finish. Go ahead, John.
You would have to show that they understand and comprehend why it's wrong, what's right, and why, because fraud is the positive claim.
Yeah.
They have committed fraud. That is a positive claim.
Is that what I'm going to show? Is that it? Is that all I've got to do? Because I can do that. Based on the type of education that they must have had to qualify. A comprehensive education. Therefore, the standard they must have met in order to pass meant that they must have comprehended. You said understood. Now, unless this...
Well, hold on.
Go on.
Hold on. Because in their minds, there is not a contradiction between the three-dimensional mass attracts mass and the fourth-dimensional concept of space-time bending. And if you ask them, they'll try to give a justification for why it's not a contradiction. They believe it's true.
Come on, John.
And they will try to explain to you why it's true. It's not fraud.
If they do that, they don't comprehend the fourth dimensional time bending.
That's
then
my
they
point.
should have. Then they just. I don't know how they passed.
I agree.
Because I'm gonna say it like this.
I agree, D-Rose. That's exactly my point. Yes.
Yeah.
Hold on, George Musser. I'll quote George Musser. He's an authority. We can, we do, we must think of Newtonian gravity as a force. It doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't have to work at the really is level.
Bruh, if my children tell me that the teacher told them 2 + 2 is 4, all the way through 12th grade, then they go to Columbia University, Harvard or Yale, then they tell them, guess what? 2 + 2 is not really 4. 2 + 2 is 8. Because if you break down the time bending and the squirrel bending, then you kind of, you got to square the 16 and all that. And then they say, when you become teachers, go back and tell those children that's 2 + 2 is 4. Now, either they didn't comprehend or knew that they were being told a lie in the university that 2 + 2 is 8 because of the 16 squared and the time bending and the squirrel bending backwards, or they knew they were lying about the 2 + 2 is 4. These are adults. Stop making excuses for them. They know better. They're just as comprehensible as you are. They're just as comprehensible.
I'm making an argument, and I'm stating that they may not have a competent faculty of reasoning, just as Newton described his own supposition.
My teacher, which you've heard the story so many times, when I addressed this as a kid, he said, look, I don't even believe it. I just have to teach it. My teacher was honest when I pressed them.
Exactly. That's honest.
And then I know 2 school teachers, both making well over $100,000 a year in the modern school system in California, who walked away from those salaries of over $200,000 a year because they wanted them to teach wokeism and say things they knew were not true. They walked.
That's a different topic, though.
Forget the topic.
Hold on. Were them people
let me finish.
heliocentric? Hold on. Were they heliocentrists?
Forget
when
the
they
topic. I'm still not done sharing the story, but since you want to say that's a different topic, have as many flavors of ice cream you want. It's the character. I'm in the middle. It's the character of the person that I'm upholding here. So when my teacher says, I don't believe it, I just got to teach it, I said, fine, then it's all fake and they're paying you to be fake because you need a paycheck to pay your mortgage. Oh, that was simple for me. Okay, now these 2 teachers do it on another, topic, but they both, the comparison is both had character to tell the truth. Okay? And I know. Go on, John.
Well, then those 2 characters that have the character to tell the truth, when they committed fraud and told their kids it was a sphere, they didn't have that character, or they did have that character?
No, when I pressed them, because the questions were very solid even at that point, he says, look, I just got to teach this stuff. Why are you making my job hard for me? I don't even believe it. He pretty much told the truth about what he was willing to do with his character. Earn a paycheck.
I wasn't talking about him. I was talking about the 2 that quit because of their character. Prior to that, they were heliocentrists because they're in the Western school system, educational system.
Right.
Right. But they're heliocentrists teaching this stuff fraudulently, but their character dictates that they don't commit fraud.
No.
So you're saying
10th man said that they quit. They gave up
In a different
$200,000 salary
scenario.
because they would not
I
teach
know.
that fraud.
In a different. Hold on, D-Rose.
Fake
Right,
is
hold
fraud.
on. If you've said that, it makes me think the audience will have lost track. What John is saying is, okay, I accept that 2 teachers stood their ground because of some woke policy that the school imposed. However, up until that point, those same teachers, by the standard we are fighting for, or I am fighting for in this example, were committing fraud. But their standards for that were okay, and they accepted it. Now, John's argument is to say, if they recognise the fraud, these teachers at that point for the woke policy walked. Therefore, they can't have recognised the fraud in terms of heliocentrism because they'd have applied the same standards. And therefore, it is unreasonable to assume that they have recognised the discrepancy and contradiction between mass attracting mass as taught as school kids versus bending fourth dimensional space-time, not a force, when they did their higher education to get their teacher's degree. So therefore, lots and lots of unpacking being done. I hope you've all appreciated how ill I am and how much I've kept up. Therefore, it's unreasonable to label them without an actual motivation being told to you. And finally, to package this all up in terms of Neil deGrasse Tyson, we can't accuse Neil deGrasse Tyson of being a fraud when he does this exact doublespeak, even though he's doing it in essentially the same classroom, with the same lesson, with the contradiction intact, and sometimes in one breath. We still can't make the same assumption, even though it's drawn out to debate it and get to this stage. I have to agree with John at this point.
Hang on. Last point I'll make. In the court of law, the law doesn't care if you understood or not. It was fraud. You're
Agreed.
guilty.
And who was it that made the super chat? I think it was James Richard. James Richard pointed that out earlier, and I also said the same thing right at the start. Depending on the standard that you're going to lay down, here we go, I'm going to read it again. The hardest thing to prove in a court is intent and motive. While not being able to prove them, you can still prove the crime. The crime here is fraud with overwhelming evidence. Typically, fraud motive is money. That was his super chat. And yet, we're not applying a historic standard. And in many ways, we can't divine his intent. Even if he does double speak in the same breath. Cognitive dissonance isn't it's not an excuse in a courtroom.
Right.
Well, can I say this?
Can I say this? You were judged by the predominant worldview. And if you walked into a courtroom where a judge sat and tried to bring a case against every single teacher that's ever taught Newtonian mechanics as fraud, he would laugh at you.
We're not talking. See, what you've done is you've moved it from Neil deGrasse Tyson to every single teacher who's just doing a job as a teacher to get a paycheck and hasn't given them much thought. Neil deGrasse Tyson does shows on a weekly basis, and he is double speaking, and he knows better, and he goes with the Coxes and the Musers and hangs out with them. He knows is our point.
He understands that there's short distance, high energy problems.
Oh God, with it.
That's reality.
Right, D-Rose is going to get a word in. Then Neil, go ahead, D-Rose.
Whether this is heliocentrism, or whether this is benzene being dangerous for sunscreen, if someone has been informed that it is dangerous or it is wrong or that it is a fox or fraud or fake, and then they tell others that it's not. I don't care whether they're doing it for the livelihood of feeding their precious little baby or whatever. They are committing fraud because they've been informed of the alternative truth of that which they purport. So if I tell you that microwave, if they know microwaves...
We don't need another example. We don't need another example, please.
You understand what I'm saying?
We don't need one. We don't need one. We've had loads. Please. You've summarised. You've summarised the counterposition beautifully, D-Rose. Right, you stand by your counterposition. I've subsequently agreed with John's alternative position to that. But even if we summarise them and give them a million more analogies, we're never going to come to a consensus on this. We're just going to have to move on. Everyone in agreement?
Right.
We can just move on.
My point is...
we got... No, John. No. We've got Neil, then Brian. But I do want to note on this particular subject, those two have probably got a point on it. But anybody else who's going to get in the queue, speak now.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. John, are you in the queue too?
Yeah, yeah.
Fine. Neil, go ahead.
I yield to Brian.
Brian, go ahead.
Well, you didn't have to do that, Neil, but okay. Yeah, I think that you're all off base a little bit. Now, I came in late, but I'll make it quick because other people want to go. The real fraud is they're teaching something, regardless of which version of it they're teaching. They're teaching it and calling it science when it is provably, and by definition, pseudoscience. That's the angle I would take. That if they're going to be teaching any of this stuff, if they're going to be convoluting it, whatever they want to do, they should legally be promoting it to the children and to young people and anyone else as pseudoscience, because that's what it is. That would be my position.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Adam?
Yeah.
Good point.
Hold on. Aaron, you get in the queue too?
No, I just want to say good point.
Fair enough.
From Brian.
Yeah, fair enough. Go ahead, Adam.
I think we've chewed the point a little bit to the point of misdirection. I would concede to John, if you take the average school teacher, there is a potential for ignorance and therefore no fraud whatsoever. But that wasn't what was being discussed. We're discussing somebody that's at the top of his field. He's exposed to the alternative arguments and demonstrates contradiction in his answers. Now, it's not incumbent on me to specify motivation for lying. It's just sufficient to spot the lying. Now, you may want to mitigate and pretend that that's not a lie in most people's cases, and I think you can make enough plausible reasons for why a layman wouldn't fit in this. But he's not a layman. He is a high priest. He's made it quite clear he won't debate these topics with atheists because of reasons. And at that point, you have to, I think, be realistic. And we've mentioned court standards. The court would not be able to tell you why Neil deGrasse is lying. But I think any reasonable court, given his contradictions that he presents himself, they would be able to demonstrate that he is lying on the fact that he's not a layman. Top of his field, he's ex-subject matter expert. And therefore, it's not reasonable for him not to know the contradictions and not to divulge them. Doesn't mean he has to change his position, but to have any integrity in his position, he has to at least recognize it. And he refuses to do that.
A quick shout out to James Richard again. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. He says, fraud can be imposed on others without them knowing or profiting. Just find out who profits. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support.
I would like to point out that he expresses those contradictions over and over again. We point them out, and he still holds them to be true. That's a mental problem.
Not a mental problem. We've been sending him messages. I've been sending him messages. Hero's been sending him. Don't tell me he doesn't see these things.
Right.
He's fully aware of his contradiction.
We're not a court. He doesn't give a flying shit what we say.
I was about to say exactly the
Be
same thing.
realistic and realise you're not there to hold a liar to account. You're there to recognise you're being lied to.
No, exactly. No, you're assuming the lie when it could just be an error.
I'm happy to assume in this case, with the preponderance of evidence about this individual, that I'm being lied to.
Yes, John. I will just acknowledge what John's just said. Hold on. What John's just said is basically, if I side with Adam now, just to make the point, that me and Adam would now, stress the standard that supports our side of this argument over and over. So from a legal point of view, we'll just stress that again. Yeah. Can we draw a close to this now? Is there any other drawing this out so much?
My point is, and it's why I made this opposing argument, is you don't know. And you're making a positive claim of knowledge that you know that they're lying, and you don't.
I'll bring it to a close. He's a lying sack of shit.
Perfect. We've got both. Great.
I said I'm happy to know that I am being lied to. Doesn't make him a liar, but I know what's being put to me is lies. They're contradictory lies. I'm happy with that. From then on, I can move on and know his words aren't worth anything. I don't need to do any more than that, other than ignore
The
his
cream
words.
floats
The
to the
cream
top.
rises to the top. You skim it
Okay.
off, and you got some heavy cream.
So we say it's heavier, but we don't really mean heavier. Heavier to me is the absolute weight. How heavy is it? Can I
Right.
pick it up?
What we
So
mean is
there-
thinner.
no, it's not thinner.
Well, it's more.
less
It's not as
dense.
viscous. Less dense.
Okay, viscosity is no. I should have added that. We'll get to viscosity in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to have a new convolution. And G will be introduced shortly.
Okay.
Heavy cream is less dense than water, than skim milk.
Right.
Okay, here's where we're going to start agreeing with him. So let's see where we stop nodding along.
If you are less dense than something else, you float.
Go on.
But it's about. Bruce, come up.
Oh, and are you off mute talking to yourself in Dutch?
Yeah. The catboard literally jumped on my keyboard. Sorry.
I just heard Dutch swearing and profanity.
Yeah, the cat jumped on my keyboard. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It was quite amusing, actually.
Oh, there you go. There it is.
Nothing else
Nothing else
about
matters. Right.
you. Okay? You will float.
Just do that again. Did you just describe the density relationship and said nothing else matters? Let's just listen to that again.
Milk.
Right.
Yep.
If you are less dense than something else, you float.
Oh, there you go. There it is.
Nothing else
Nothing else
about
matters. Right.
you. Okay?
There you go. So relative density. That's all it is. That's all this boils down to. Nothing else matters.
Was he being honest there, John?
I can't believe it. I said we'd be nodding along. I didn't think
It doesn't have to do with honesty. Is it correct or incorrect?
It's correct.
You all introducing lying is a false assumption of intent.
No. I'm not. The question, I'm from his perspective, with his education, he's just made a statement that the only thing that matters is density. Yeah. Well, we agree with that. Does he really agree with it? Or is he making a statement of truth, but he's about to disagree with it in a minute?
You will float. So heavy cream is, we would say it's lighter than skim milk, but that's a little deceptive. If you want to be precise, you say it's less dense than skim milk,
There you
and
go.
therefore it floats. Okay. So this is the fight. It wasn't a fight. The encounter I had in a Pasadena coffee shop when I ordered hot chocolate with whipped cream, and the hot chocolate came, and there was no whipped cream anywhere to be found. And I said, server, where is the whipped cream? They said, oh, we put it on. I said, where is it? Oh, it must have sunk to the bottom. At which point I said,
Is this a good example? I don't know.
either.
Go on, Neil.
No, I don't understand what he's saying. It's not going to sink to the bottom. Where's he getting that from?
I
Well,
think
that's what I'm
that's his
thinking.
point.
I've made lots of hot chocolates. My wife loves hot chocolate, right? And for a Christmas present, I got a hotel chocolate. I don't know if you have that everywhere else, but we have it here, and it's just an expensive, high cocoa percentage chocolate. Mix it with milk, put it on the steamer, hot chocolate. But what I like to do is put whipped cream on, and then put marshmallows on, and then toast those marshmallows with a lighter. And then I give them to my wife, and she loves me for it. Right? But I don't think I've ever squirted on the whipped cream and had it sink. That hasn't happened in my experience. That's why I asked if it was a good example.
Yeah, this is his point. He's saying it can't have sunk. It's less dense than hot chocolate. So you haven't put it on.
Oh, sorry. I haven't let him get to the end of his example. Hold on, let's just let me get to the end of it. Okay, I'm jumping the gun. My bad. I take it back, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I will just do a quick shout out, though, to put some distance between my mistake. Shout out to James Richard again. Wow, smashing the super. Bill, just give us 1 second and I'll come to you in a sec. James Richard, thank you very much for the super chat. It says, in America, you cannot teach religion in public schools. So why are they? Heliocentrism even has it's a creation story. Yeah, what they mean is you can't teach other religions. That's what that really means. When I teach my kid about it, I'm like, look, this is the state religion. Consider it like the Western world religion. When I teach her a heliocentric belief. That's how I phrase it to her. My youngest is too young to understand any of this stuff, but you know, the eldest, that's how I phrase it to her. This is just your state religion. This is how they believe it works based on the new version of the church that used to be in control and we now call government, to dumb it down for her. But yeah, thank you very much, James Richard. We're going to get to the end of this statement now, so I jumped the gun. I will just concede now.
You are lying, or the laws of physics that apply to the rest of the universe do not apply in your coffee shop.
Okay, fine. So yeah, I just did jump the gun. His experience of hot chocolate's the same as mine.
So hold up. He's happy to call somebody a liar. What happens if
That's
you put
exactly
the cream
what
in first, right, and then poured the hot chocolate on? Would the cream have rose to the top? Or would it just melted in it? Nah, Neil.
That's a different standard, Adam. I'm sorry. For a second, I thought, oh, has he got John there? No. Because in this circumstance, if the cream is absent and they say it must have sunk to the bottom, I will call liar also, having made a hot chocolate before, because no, it wouldn't have sunk to the bottom. Therefore, you're just lying.
Yeah, but is he lying, or did he genuinely think he'd put it in? Then, to the best of his knowledge, I've put that in.
Oh,
you're not lying when he says.
Okay, no, that's good. Okay, John. So, it's a very hot and busy coffee shop that Neil deGrasse Tyson has been to, and the barista happens to have served 4 customers with 4 different orders. Okay, now this guy, I am assuring you now, has made at least 1,000 hot chocolates. Okay, we all following along. He has handed Neil deGrasse Tyson a hot chocolate that does not have whipped cream on the top of it. And he has stated to him that it must have sunk to the bottom. Because we can only assume, given that he's made 1,000 prior, and they've all had cream on top, that in this instance, the reason it's not there is because the laws of physics don't apply. Right? Now, by the standard we discussed earlier, just by pure chance with Neil deGrasse Tyson's example, with him calling this man a liar, that standard has just been breached by Neil deGrasse Tyson because of his accusation of this barista. Would you not agree?
I think it is wonderful that Neil deGrasse Tyson is willing to apply the same standard as you guys. Good job.
Oh, that was a brilliant get out. Oh, God, that's brilliant. I waffled too long. I gave him too much time to think of that response. It's my fault. Quick shout out to Sensual Goat. He's gifted 5 memberships. Let's just scroll to the bottom so I can appreciate it with the actual... Where is it? There we go. Yeah, shout out to you, Sensual Goat. Thank you very much indeed. Looks like they've all gone already. So, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. I just want to get... Go on.
Sorry, if you have super chats or something.
I was reading it out, but you go ahead. I was going to repeat my props to John for that last minute get out, but go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Sorry about that. Is it possible, right? This is a bit of a long shot, that the barista is a flat earther and is trying to start a conversation?
Is it possible that he's just mistaken and he said something that was factually inaccurate, but he believed must be true because he thought he actually put it on there?
Yes.
Does that make him a liar?
That's correct. And unless we get into that guy's psyche, that barista, we're never really going to know, aren't we? Same stalemate as last time. Excellent. Thank you, John. Wow, the super chats are really rolling in today. I should really check the GoFundMe, see if anybody supported that. Although I didn't tie it to a staying live, did I? Maybe I should have done that bribery to get some more GoFundMe campaign contributions. Right, shout out to James Richards. Let's just make this... wow, it's not often that I can't keep up with the super chats. Rob Khan says, I'm still around. Thank you very much for the super chat. It's because it's the first of the month, isn't it? If you're a member, you get a free super chat. Shout out to James Richards, who says, if the, quote, laws of physics in the universe don't apply to your coffee shop, why do they hold them applicable as if they do? And how do they know about them? Question mark. Right on. I think what James Richards saying here is Neil deGrasse Tyson has accused this barista of lying based on the laws of nature that we would use to debunk space. How do you know about these laws of nature to accuse the man of being a liar? If you do, surely you'd appreciate how they don't apply to your sky vacuum. Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, I like that. Second law of thermodynamics. Don't apply to whipped cream in coffee shops.
Yeah, we I think that's a testament to us. I'm going to take credit for James Richards' super chat in terms of us pointing out about 3 years ago that entropic effects are a relative density disequilibrium. That is to say, what's being described in this particular instance right now by Neil deGrasse Tyson is a second-order effect of entropy. Now, that sounds like I'm really smart when I say that, but the reality of me being able to summarize that so beautifully was about I don't know how long, maybe 5 days of conversation between Dr. John D, Quantum Eraser, Adam. There was other people there, but I tagged along and listened because I had nothing to offer to the conversation. But after those people much smarter than myself hashed it out, the conclusion that was drawn at the end was, okay, therefore, what we're describing when we talk about, I don't know, helium balloon going up, a log floating, or a penny dropping through water, i.e. relative density disequilibrium effects, then you're talking about a second-order effect of entropy.
That was the best we could get out of it with, yeah. Remember that.
Shout out to Nicholas Pitts, who says, gas has mass, gas has mass. What's mass? Please define gas mass for us, Nicholas Pitts. See if you do a better job than Neil deGrasse Tyson, who hinted at mole when he just defined how many molecules a chuck would have. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support.
And so he got all gruffy and indignant, and he went by and brought cream with him, okay, and then plunked it down, and it took one bob and it floated. I said, "Thank you for my whipped cream." Mm-hmm. Now I don't know if
what he didn't know is he gobbed on the bottom of it.
that became like a story, because I'm sure waitstaff tell stories,
right?
But that's what happened.
Did the phlegm float as well?
So he's thinking it's heavy, it probably fell to the bottom, and would choose to lie rather.
There we go. He called it a lie. But John's already got around this. He's qualifying it with the same incorrect standard, although John didn't say incorrect, as we would. How dare you, Neil?
No, but for Neil's sensibilities here, okay, because he knows the way he's perceived it, he's being lied to, because he knows what whipped cream will do. Yeah, just like we know that you can't say one statement 1 second and one another. We know we're being lied to.
You're right. He's lending credence to our standards, but not based on our own high standards and self-accountability within. John has held us to a higher standard. Unfortunately, Adam.
I'm dealing with lies. Is the reality? Yeah. From Neil deGrasse. He's dealing with lies from the other guy because the statements aren't truthful. They don't comport with reality. If there was whipped cream in there, it'd be floating. He's saying there is whipped cream. There isn't. So that is a straight lie to reality.
But the barista definitely intended to deceive Neil deGrasse Tyson in that statement. It wasn't a confusion with the order.
Doesn't matter whether he intended or not, even if he's genuine thinking he put it in, it's a lie. There isn't any in there.
I totally understand. It reminds me of a
lie.
Judge Judy, whenever this sort of scenario would come up and someone would point out in an RTA, they go, but I didn't do it on purpose.
Right. Wow.
And the person would, and Judge Judy's response was, yeah, that's why they call it an accident. They don't call it an on purpose.
Right. So this is my point. It's where it becomes a lie. He's an experienced barista. What does he, with all his experience, know what a hot chocolate that's had cream added to it looks like?
Absolutely. I totally agree. He'd done 1,000 prior. 1,000. Right. They all floated.
So he knows that if he's put the cream in, it's floating. Now,
absolutely, Judge. Absolutely. He couldn't not have known, Judge. He made 1,000 prior. Totally agree, Adam. What was that you were saying, John?
More importantly, he gets the opportunity to look down with his experience and know whether or not he's put the cream in. At this point, he's left with a choice whether to admit his mistake or lie.
Oh, so cognitive dissonance isn't playing a part in his. I know I did this. I've made 1,000 of these. I know what to do. I had to put it in there. Therefore, it must have sank. It's just not an error. It's a lie.
It becomes a lie when he's given the opportunity to inspect and use his experience. And then he stands by it, even though the obvious is clear.
You've described cognitive dissonance, not a lie.
Tyson, who isn't a barista, Neil deGrasse Tyson's got enough experience to know that if there was cream in it, it would be floating. So his inexperience points that out. Now, the barista's got the ultimate experience. Now, he may have made the mistake, but at this point now, his next response is the lie.
Is an error.
Okay, before we debate that back and forth for 10 minutes, shout out to James Richard. What about before whipped cream came about? Then they used to pour it off the back of a spoon. They called it a floater.
No, he's invoked cognitive dissonance. So the only way he's cogged this is that he's got magic cream that's done something that never, ever in all of his experience before has that ever done. But it's done it this time to keep his reputation correct, that he makes hot chocolates in the same way each time and that he hasn't made a mistake. You're invoking that. But that's the denial.
So you're saying that is absolutely not the case. You know that how?
I would say that's even less likely, yeah, because he's given the opportunity to look.
So these are just realms of possibilities then, huh?
Yeah.
Not just errors.
Yeah.
Well,
unless
I
you
think
apply
there
legal
realms
standard.
of possibility if you're wanting to define motive. But as again, in a court of law, with all reasonableness and reality-based assumption, then you kind of have to draw the conclusion that at this point, he was lying when the error was pointed out and he doubled down on the fact it was there, which would be contradictory to his professional knowledge. And
everybody wants to apply this standard.
You know, the barista could have got around this much easier by just saying, you can think of it as having whipped cream. That would have solved all the problems.
Right. Everybody wants to apply this standard until it applies to them.
Let me throw something at you, John. If I ask you to define weight, and you define it, and you agree that weight is a linear downward vector, and you claim that something has weight, right? Or when I place something on top of something, it will add to its weight, right? You agree, yes, right? And when I take that thing away, the thing has to weigh less, and you agree, yes. But then I point out that when I take that thing away, the thing weighs more. And then you point around and say, buoyancy.
Right, I've defined weight with gravity already as an assumption
yeah, but you've
within
already
it.
Agreed that you know.
Have I defined weight as gravity already being assumed when you said downward vector?
I didn't say gravity at all. I mentioned gravity one time. I said
that's not what he asked. He's saying, would he be automatically assuming it, Brian?
No, it's not my business where he automatically assumes it.
No, but he's postulating. And I know you're not. I know it's not your business. But for the sake of the discussion, given that in this scenario, devil's advocate styley, John would be the glober. Can we infer or assume that he would start with the premise of gravity? Can you just concede that, please?
Yeah, he probably would. But
Go ahead,
that
John.
doesn't change. That doesn't change.
All right,
that goes against John's
man's
point.
piping up now. Love it. Go ahead, John.
Right. So it's a heliocentrist you're probably talking to making these claims. They're assuming gravity.
Right.
Already.
I like being
How do you
proven wrong.
know?
So when
I'm gonna go against 10th and Adam and maybe even Brian, depending on how he repositions himself from here. But I think I've already conceded twice. I'm going to concede again. I was wrong to propose that accusation at him. I can't divine his intent. Not by the standards that we hold here. We've held ourselves to a higher standard. Now we can reposition that standard and make it legal and say we don't have to divine his intent. Not high enough standard, I'm afraid.
Well,
sorry, guys.
That's not the standard I redefined it as.
I know.
When I'm being lied to. I don't care about his motivations. I know what's coming out of his mouth is contradictory and lies. Now, I'll concede to John, that doesn't make him a liar per se. I can't prove that, but it's certainly how I'll deal with the information he provides.
Right. The false information that he gives, if you use his standard that he just laid down, you could call him a liar. But I don't like using his standard.
He said laws of physics. Let's use that standard.
He didn't help his own case, did he? Refracted, actually. There.
No, we can't lean on him. He's in.
did.
If he was in a courtroom, he'd be indicting himself left and right.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. So yeah, we're not going to lean on him though, because he's the accused in this example, right?
I'd concede the point ultimately.
Fine.
In terms of if my mortal soul was on it as to say whether he is a liar or not, I wouldn't gamble. I would stick. I'd have to stick.
That's the standard I apply. If your neck was on the block and you were forced to say, really, you're really going to put your neck on it? I'd say, no, I don't know. I just have to concede, as I've done 3 or 4 times now.
I would.
Go, Brian. Then
Brian said weight. Brian never said gravity. And then John brought inference that Neil deGrasse Tyson, which John is arguing, how we know what his, to divine his thoughts. His inference was that he believes in gravity. But John did the very same thing. He's saying we can't do.
I'm taking an alternative position to point out that you can't know.
Know what?
His intentions, his motivation,
Oh my
as
God.
opposed to his cognitive dissonance. Therefore accusing
I have
of fraud.
all of his.
Okay.
That was a question for John.
Yeah,
know
I just
what?
need to shout out a
I
super
have
chat.
1,000 videos from him.
Just need to shout out a super chat. Gravity was never proven, has never been proven. It has, however, been disproven. Neil knows this. He's lying. It's rather simple, says James Richard. Thank you very much for the super chat. Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah. If I've been lied to and I don't know, and I go pass out that lie and it causes great harm, I'm still guilty of something because I said something and it caused great harm, whether I knew it or not. That's not the point we're talking here, though. We're talking about a high priest who has a show, who says he believes in the laws of physics, except when the laws of physics go against his heliocentric model. And then we have all of the stuff that we've heard from him, and we're putting him at a different standard because he's the one lying to everyone who goes lying without thinking they're lying and causes great harm.
Fine. Okay, I can show a couple of different things that's going on here, right? The first thing is that I want the audience to appreciate that we are not discussing whether or not Neil deGrasse Tyson is right in his assertions of heliocentrism. Notice, or take note of, how far beyond whether or not his rhetoric of heliocentrism is correct or not we are when we discuss his motivation, and the potential ramifications is the only implication of this discussion. In other words, when you take it to a courtroom standard, well, what's the implication thereafter? Well, that there's going to be some sort of punishment. If we're talking about fraud, that's the standard, right? Therefore, we're kind of saying, should we be furious at this lying scumbag? Or should we let him off the hook in terms of whether or not... Now, the reason I'm saying these things is because, as far as I am concerned, when Adam phrases it as such, which is to say, I appreciate when I have been lied to, it removes any culpability from Tyson. Now, that's how I like it, or would like it to be. That is to say that once you've figured out that you're being lied to, the conduit in this case, Neil deGrasse Tyson, should then be detached from and made insignificant in your life, rather than focused on for their motive. Now, this comes back to dealing with narcissists and psychopaths. I'm not accusing Tyson of being a narcissist or a psychopath. I'm just saying that the rules of no contact would apply here. So, Adam, you've figured out that you are being lied to. Now, whether or not you say the man who's the conduit for the information is or is not a liar becomes inconsequential, does it not? It's just you don't want a part of that misinformation, deceit, lies, if you will. Therefore, detach yourself from the person that's disseminating that information, rather than try and find culpability in them and therefore punish them? Do we want to punish Tyson as a result of his quote-unquote lies here? Is that what we're aiming for?
No, I wouldn't say that, but can I say something, Nathan? I want to say there's 2 types of people that can commit fraud. Hold on.
I don't like putting people in a position that believe something because I don't know. I just don't. I don't see calling them liars because the implications would have to run across so many people that it seems conspiratorial. And then it leads you down this whole rabbit hole of
no, hang on,
That's
John.
why we've changed position. That's why we've changed position. And certainly Nathan has, and I have, in terms of the way I would word it. Okay, that it means it's not necessary for me to indict the individual. I don't need to. For me to move forwards with the knowledge that that information is next to useless, contradictory. I might, from that contradiction, try to divine some motivation, but that would be a waste of my energy because I didn't set out to find out how truthful Neil deGrasse Tyson is. Just in the truths I was finding out, it became apparent he doesn't speak truth. He's giving me, and I'm happy with that because, like I say, I don't know Neil. I have no power to indict him once I've come to my conclusion. So it is pointless, other than if he keeps doing this and we keep doing this, he will get his punishment. Which
Let's
is
just ask John that as a
diminishment of his
question then, Adam.
reputation.
Sorry to interrupt. Would you accept that statement? He's not speaking truth, John?
Yes, absolutely. But that would to automatically say it's a lie, that is a false dichotomy.
Hang on, John. In the example I gave earlier, I had you agree to what weight was. There was a total agreement before we ever moved forward, and I had you agree that under the conditions that you're claiming, then and that object must weigh less in a vacuum. And when I pointed out that that object weighed more in a vacuum, you brought buoyancy into it. And then you said, but I have a belief in gravity or whatever, or you brought gravity into it. But that's your belief. You agreed to what weight was. So if I did the same thing with Neil deGrasse Tyson, agreed to what weight was, which he'd have to do. He can't bring buoyancy into it later on. That's buoyancy because it's connected to a belief he has. His beliefs about things and factual things are they're completely separate.
I agree.
So I could indict him as long as once he agreed to what weight was, I could indict him.
Sorry to interrupt the conversation, but James Richard, thank you. You've been smashing the super chat so hard today. You know you've been lied to, so someone's lying. That's his attitude to this. Maybe not.
Well, let me
go on, John.
Let me go back to the truthful statement, because when you fill out it's either true or false. A false statement is not always a lie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I proved that he was well aware. I got an agreement of what weight was. Anything
with
else
gravity in it. A downward vector, right?
No, that's not. He agreed, and he agreed to what has to happen under the conditions that he's claiming, which is that air, let's just say air, gives weight to objects, which creates their gas pressure gradient. That's his claim. So I proved to him that air doesn't have weight under the definition of weight that he agreed to, because there is no other definition.
I don't disagree with you, Brian. I'm saying it's an error. His claim is an error.
John. That's dishonesty.
Oh, no, it's an error.
1 second, just let me say something. There's a very small difference between lying and dishonesty. You can be there's two ways to be dishonest. One is to lie, and the other is to conceal the truth. So I can show in a court of law that he is being dishonest.
Both of those are lying. You just described lying twice.
No, to tell a lie.
Lying by omission.
You would ask me, were you in such and such a place today? And I go, no. Right? When you know I was. As opposed to say, were you in such and such a place today? And I go, and I send you off in some other direction. And I don't give you a straight yes or no. One is lying, one is concealing the truth. Both of them are dishonesty. Dishonesty is the word, rather than focusing on lying.
Right, there's lying by omission, and that's where you failed to mention the truth. And then there's lying by, what's the other? Commission?
Commission. I brought this up earlier, John. I said he knows the laws of physics, and so it's omission.
Oh, no, it's error. That's all you can
Okay.
prove. It's error.
I side with
Yeah.
Adam. Adam's got it in the right place. And no, I don't think I could divine the thoughts of everyone I meet. So I stand with John there. But I do know his show titles, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I do know what he says, and I do know he knows what he's talking about when he's around his fellow psychic astrophysicists, and he takes a different position there than he does on these shows. So something's going on here.
1 sec, I've got a hot chocolate with whipped cream ready for retro bowl. Is there a retro bowl in the cafeteria? Got a hot chocolate with whipped cream for you. Shout out to you, retro bowl. He says, instead of going to Starbucks, I make a coffee at home, yell out my name incorrectly, then light a $5 bill on fire, or make a super chat. Thank you very much.
You know, I hate making this argument. I do.
I can tell, John.
I do. I hate it, but you don't know. You don't.
What I do know. What I
No,
do
it's a
know.
point well made, John. You made it. I think you made it well.
Second, Adam. Oh, I do know his thoughts on weight because I had him define it and agree to it, which I would thoroughly do before I go forward. I do know his thoughts about weight, and I do know what he agrees to, so I don't have to worry about divining his thoughts. So when he wants to bring buoyancy into it or gravity or anything at the end, it's nothing to do with it. He's fully aware.
So
of what
anybody
weight
that
was.
uses apologetics for a belief is a liar.
It's not. It's about he knows what weight is. So he's being dishonest when he is refusing to admit that he's wrong in the court.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We're going to play a bit more Neil deGrasse Tyson. So
lie about it, thinking that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about.
And when you took it away, you looked at him and you went, "Science, bitch."
You just got scienced.
You just got scienced.
Science.
Right. Refracted. Is he a liar now? Does he not know what science is?
No, he doesn't.
I don't think he knows what science is. I think he thinks it's a philosophy at best.
Yeah, nobody in his field understands uses the scientific method.
That's a Michio Kaku quote from Arwen right there.
Yeah. I'm happy, though, to know that what's coming out of his mouth is untruth.
Okay.
I agree. I agree with that.
A couple more things about weight, mass, and density. So, you realize that logs float, all right?
Right.
So if you're going to say, if I want it, but I don't float very well, all right? So if I want to float on the water, I'm going to use a log. So why don't I get a big log and then haul?
I don't know about anybody else, but I actually don't need a log to float on water.
Blow it out. Okay. These are the first canoes.
Right.
Okay. The canoes are made of wood. And you know the canoe's going to float. I'm going to get in it, and we're good to go.
Does anybody else feel like they're being made more stupid by listening to this?
Hey, objection. Not all logs float.
Not all logs float.
Not all logs float. That's a thing of temperature. Check out Victor Strasberger, something like that. Temperature of the water decides whether the log floats or not.
Therefore, he's a liar. Liar.
Hey, pardon me, guys, real quick. Can I say
Hang on,
something?
it's not all about that. There's more than that to it. When the water displaces the air that's in the log sinks to the bottom. There's also that. But that's not the point. The point is that what Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing here is he's trying to elbow in, right, subconsciously, buoyancy, because he's bringing in Archimedes' principle when he's bringing in canoe. He switched from a log to canoe. That's like me switching from a log to cabin.
He's not.
Or log to handle.
He's going to invoke a net upward buoyancy force based on the combination of two downward Gs.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you make a boat out of steel? Well, I can't do that because the steel will sink. That's not a boat. That's not going to work. No, let's be clever about it. Okay? By the way, if you make a boat out of steel, it's then impervious to the weapons of other boats. Oh my gosh, what a military advance this would be.
Wait, did he say steel or did he say adamantium?
He said steel. I don't know where he's going with this. But he's
Impervious.
wrong there.
Impervious, he says. Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Vibranium.
The
He said
19th
the
century.
steel won't float either.
I think he's just confused. I think he's mistaking like steel for unobtainium.
I think it was, where the first people figured out I can make a boat out of things that are impervious to cannonballs. Okay?
Right.
And so, whereas if I make a boat out of wood, then it just busts through the wood.
Right.
So, what matters is not the density of the material. What matters is the density of everything that is sitting below water.
Aha.
So, if I create a hull, only the outer edge of the hull is made of steel. What's everything else inside the hull made out of?
Dear Earth 2 players and community, in this vlog we'll be introducing details about the second
Something else. No.
Air.
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 It's like a ballast. That,
It's okay. No, ballast has a different purpose.
Right.
Oh my God.
You want to stabilize. Okay.
Right.
So you put some heavy things just at the very bottom of the hull.
And that keeps it in position.
And that keeps it in position. So that'd be ballast.
Okay.
And a lot of the cobblestone in lower Manhattan that built the roads was ballast in ships that came from Europe. Okay. And then
Okay. Anybody got anything to say on this? Because again, we're nodding along because what he's disseminating, as mind-numbingly boring as it is, there's nothing wrong with it, right?
Yeah, it is mind-numbingly boring. This is just like, I don't know, entertaining lower intelligence people. Let's just say it like that.
It's like
boring.
history from the man in the pub.
Yeah, that's how it kind of feels.
Hey, Nathan, pardon me, mate. Nathan, I got pulled. I got summoned at my job, but I was going to say real quick, there's two types of people that commit fraud. There's one who has like a plausible deniability, not knowing that it's a lie or whatever they're selling, what they're purporting. Then there's the one that knows, has been given the briefing and everything, and then still perpetrates the fraud. Who cares what the motive is, whether Neil does this for a lifetime supply of candy corn or whether he gets money or free trips to Disney. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, if you know what you're saying is a lie and you do it for any type of incentive, it's fraud. If you don't know what you're doing because you really believe what you're saying, then that's plausible deniability, or if no one tells you whether it's a lie or not. That's plausible deniability. So in court or by ethics of life, still, if you know and you tell it and you pay it forward, you're a fraud and you're a liar.
A couple of quick shout outs to James Richards, who's been smashing the super chat super hard this entire show. Says, if you figured out the lie, wouldn't you look to those perpetrating the lie? ? If not, where else do you look, and how would you know if it's a lie? ? He also says, thank you for the super chat, and then thank you for the further super chat, James Richard, that says, so John is saying the globe is in error and not a lie. Again, there is no lie without a liar/liars. Okay, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support and the input.
I agree. Just a bunch of dumb people being dumb.
Yeah, me included. So I've given this story many times when I've disseminated the information of heliocentrism to my niece. Was I a liar? Was she receiving information that was lies? Yes. Was I a liar? No. I had absolutely no intention to deceive her. Quite the contrary. Therefore, a lie was perpetrated without a liar.
Well, a falsehood was perpetrated without a liar.
No.
No.
Incorrect information was disseminated to your niece because from someone, which is you, who is ignorant of his error. Neither person is not ignorant of his error.
Exactly.
Are we going to ascribe intelligence to these people? Like, are they really this smart? Is that what it is?
I don't know. They just run the world.
Define how smart they are. Sorry,
No, they just run the world, and it's the #1 religion in the world. We're not going to ascribe anything to them. We got forks talking to children about what cheese is, but never saying what it is. But they go through dark matter and black holes. This whole thing, from the crib over your head to now every cartoon with a globe and heliocentrism and space-time 4D, all of this. No, it's not a lie. They're just in charge. Don't worry about it. They're just dumb people.
It's definitely a religion of ignorance. I think that's why it's so easy to buy into.
Yeah, but Neil deGrasse Tyson is not ignorant of that.
Let's go through this again for the 15th time. Yes, we can indict him on his prior knowledge and clear understanding as a heliocentric priest of the contrary positions that he holds. Yes, Brian.
What? Can't we get back to how things float?
We are.
Sweet.
Yeah. So a lot of it, not all, and other things as well. But point is, so now the density is what is the total mass divided by the total volume. Okay. So the density is grams per cubic centimeter or pounds per cubic inch. So those are the units of density. So let me get some units out there. So we've got.
Didn't he say that weight wasn't mass? Why is he putting weight in as mass in that equation?
Yeah, but also in one breath he told you that weight was mass, and to change your weight, you needed to change your mass, and he simultaneously, in the same breath, not that he's a liar, said the complete opposite. That's correct.
Village idiots do that too.
Yep.
At the units of mass are grams and kilograms, and I'm not going to tell you the unit of mass for the English.
Like weight in air.
System. Okay. And the unit, you're supposed to say, why not?
What did he just say? What did he just say? He's not going to tell us? Go back.
Did he really just say that?
In kilograms.
Yeah, go back,
and
please.
I'm not going to tell you the unit of mass for the English system. Okay.
Okay. So he's not going to tell us the unit of mass, which means he knows the unit of mass.
No, he does. It's pound.
No, he's just not going to tell us.
No, it's pound. He's speaking to an English audience. He would assume they know.
How do you know? How can you have first thoughts?
No, he's not. This is a switcheroo. This is a switcheroo. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you the units of mass. He didn't say weight, mass. I know you're not going to tell me the units of mass because they're going to be the same as weight, aren't they? So you're going to be a smart ass, patronize your audience, and make them feel intelligent by going pounds, kilograms. Let them assume it. Dirty Bertie.
The unit.
If that's what he's thinking.
Why not? Tell me.
The dirty liar.
Why not? No. So seriously, why wouldn't you give out the
Okay, the unit of mass in the English system is slug.
No.
Yes, that's why I told you not to ask me. So so the mass, grams, kilograms, this sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Volume
Anyone want to comment? No?
Is the cubic of something.
Pounds has nothing to do with buoyancy.
No, is he about to give a description? Just see.
Of some length. So cubic inch, cubic centimeter, cubic meter, those are volumes. Density is the mass divided by the volume.
Mass divided by volume.
Okay, so let's see how that works. So if I have a certain amount of mass and I put it in a smaller and smaller volume,
it becomes more and more dense.
Yeah. So what happens if the denominator?
Yeah, but what is it though?
He's changed the subject halfway through and not said it, has he? Or am I missing something here?
Yeah, that's what he's done, Adam. He's going off on a different tangent now, not completing anything because he didn't want to address with the pounds issue.
He's not finishing sentences, is he?
He's not finishing the description. So he's starting off by describing the displacement, aka relative density disequilibrium, with the ship displacing the water. Now he's describing units of mass for the amount of stuff in a given volume. That would be mole. We covered that earlier. But he hasn't finished his description. That's what Adam's saying. He sidestepped it and now we're on to a different description after saying that he's not going to qualify what mass actually is. But then the co-host has pushed him to do exactly that, and he is.
The denominator gets smaller.
Is it all right?
Then the number gets bigger.
How long? 20 seconds?
20 seconds, yeah, perfect. I just can't believe he's done.
Cubic inch, cubic centimeter, cubic meter, those are volumes. Density is the mass divided by the volume.
Mass divided by volume.
Okay, so let's see how that works. So if I have a certain...
Is it? How's he going to... See, he's only got weight. He's not defined mass yet, but he's going to tell you density is mass. He wants to figure out the density in that boat. He's going to take all the weights and divide by the volume of the boat. Not going to take mass.
Certain amount of mass, and I put it in a smaller and smaller volume.
It becomes more and more dense.
Yeah. So what happens if the denominator gets smaller, then the number gets bigger.
It's bigger.
So we get higher and higher density because you're cramming all of this into a smaller volume.
Right.
The volume gets bigger and bigger and bigger for the same amount of mass.
But you're not changing the weight. That's the thing. You're not changing the weight. Actually, you might even be making it heavier if you take a ship and let's say a large container ship, and you crush it into one small unit. You might even be making it heavier by doing that, because what you're doing is you're changing the density, but you're also taking away the original density, which also included air. So you're releasing air from it. So there's less air. Yeah, exactly, the average density. So there's less air. Yeah, exactly.
When it's empty, you're basically offsetting the water versus the air and the entire ship, the average density. But then when you fill it all with stuff, then the average density becomes a little bit more. Because the air is not there anymore.
Doing anything.
No, that's not what Brian's saying. No, I mean, that's not what I understood Brian to be saying. What Brian's saying is, if you weigh something and you've got a mass, a huge amount, a quantity of air that is displacing something else, a different medium altogether, or the air itself, then that is a contributing factor in what it weighs. Now, if you remove that factor, that is to say it's no longer counteracting whatever medium you've got the thing being weighed in this case air, then there's a chance that that counteraction effect is removed, and therefore the actual weight that you'll see on the scale goes up. Correct, Brian?
Exactly, Nathan. By condensing the ship down into like one square block, then you've removed the air. That means it will weigh more because there's no air to help it to have a buoyant effect.
The larger the surface area for the block, the greater the buoyancy effect, even in air. I don't think they're making anything as intelligent a comment as that. I think what he's trying to do, he's gone, let's talk units. Go a minute, sidestepped the units for mass, then gone on to say that density is mass divided by volume. Yeah? And he's just moved on from there, and he'll adopt his units now. Now he's switcherooed weight for mass, and he's just moving forward. Still not defined mass. In fact, the only definition he's given it now is weight to figure out density. Because that's, in reality, how you figure out something's density. Take its volume and you divide it by, you take its weight, don't you, and divide it by its volume. That's its density. So, switcheroo. It's what all I've heard. It's just convoluted nonsense.
Well, yeah, what I would say is what he's trying to show, we all know what he's trying to show in here, which is the force of gravity. So then he can claim buoyancy along with weight. But if he would have to agree to the fact that, which he's literally kind of detailing here, he'd have to agree to once you compress all that steel and remove the air, that the object would have to weigh a little bit more. Technically, it weighs more then. He'd have to agree to that, which is debunking his claim of a force of gravity.
Okay, we are going to carry this on, but we will carry on in the after show. So with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned. As I say, there will be an after show to follow. But in the meantime, if you are watching this live, unfortunately, this is where we bid you farewell. So first and foremost, a massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hopefully contributed to my GoFundMe campaign and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Discord G+ panel, live show members. Anybody I missed? I don't think so. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching an after show. See you all in the next video.
a lucky day.